트랜스포메이션을 통한 인공지능 대전환 시대로 돌입함에 따라 미디어 환경 역시 유리없던 변화의 시간을 맞이하고 있습니다. 우리는 새로운 시대에 저널리즘 가치와 역할을 재정립하고 저널리즘과 인공지능 기술과의 공존을 준비하고자 합니다. 새로운 저널리즘 시대에 퍼스트 무버로 나아갈 것인지 아니면 팔로워로 남겨질 것인지 선택의 기로에 선 지금 AI 기술과 공존, AI 기술과 혁신, AI 기술 발전에 대한 저널리즘 분야의 대응 방안, AI 기술을 활용한 저널리즘 산업의 확장까지 AX와 저널리즘의 주요 핵심 4가지 키워드를 바탕으로 AI를 품은 저널리즘의 미래 방향성을 국내외 전문가들과 함께 모색하고자 합니다. 올해 8회째를 맞아 2024 KPF 저널리즘 컨퍼런스 지금 시작합니다.
네, 안녕하십니까. 올해도 인사드리겠습니다. 2024 KPF 저널리즘 컨퍼런스에 참석해주신 여러분들을 진심으로 환영합니다. 저는 오늘 컨퍼런스의 사회를 맡게 된 KBS 기자 양영은입니다. 반갑습니다. 네, 오늘 굉장히 바쁘신 가운데 이렇게 또 2024 KPF 저널리즘 컨퍼런스에 참여해주신 내빈 여러분, 그리고 무엇보다 이곳저곳 찾는 곳들이 많을 텐데도 불구하고 시간을 내서 이렇게 만나러 와주신 참가자 여러분들께 먼저 감사의 말씀을 드리겠습니다. 방금 앞에 보신 오프닝 영상에서처럼 이번 컨퍼런스는 특별히 인공지능 대전환 시대로 접어든 오늘날 AI 기술 그리고 저널리즘과의 공존을 위한 방안을 모색해보기 위해서 마련됐습니다. 하루하루가 다르게 급변하고 있는 인공지능 기술 그리고 이에 발맞춰서 변화를 준비해가야 하는 그런 미디어 환경 속에서 AI와 저널리즘의 공존을 위한 방안을 모색하고 전문가들 분들로부터는 의제를 공유받고 또 네트워킹을 할 수 있는 기회가 될 것으로 기대하고 있습니다. 오늘 컨퍼런스를 위해서 참석해주신 연사분들 그리고 세션별로 진행되는 의제를 살펴보니까 저널리스트인 저도 역시 많은 기대가 됩니다. 자, 그럼 지금부터 이 자리에 계신 분들과 함께 2024 KPF 저널리즘 컨퍼런스를 시작해 보도록 하겠습니다. 먼저 오늘 컨퍼런스의 시작을 알려주실 분이시죠. 개회사를 해주실 귀빈이 자리하고 계십니다. 본 컨퍼런스를 매년 해마다 이맘때 개최하고 있는 한국언론진흥재단의 김효재 이사장님을 큰 박수로 맞이해 주시기 바랍니다. 이사장님 무대 위로 등단해 주십시오. 다시 한번 큰 박수 부탁드리겠습니다.
안녕하십니까. 한국언론진흥재단 이사장 김효재입니다. 먼저 오늘 바쁘신 와중에도 저널리즘 컨퍼런스에 참석해 주신 연사 여러분들과 이 자리에 계신 모든 참석자 여러분께 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 지난 해에 이어 우리 사회를 뜨겁게 달구고 있는 키워드는 인공지능입니다. 챗 GPT가 불러온 사회적 파장이 단순히 일시적인 유행에 그치지 않고 이제는 AI가 많은 사람들이 일상에서 사용하는 도구로서 자연스럽게 기능하고 있습니다. 이처럼 AI 기술은 우리 삶 속에 빠르게 그리고 깊숙이 스며들고 있습니다. 저널리즘의 영역에서도 이런 AI 혁명은 빠르게 진행되고 있습니다. 저명한 언론상인 퓰리처상이 올해 수상자 중 수상작품 두 편은 AI를 활용하여 작성된 기사로 밝혀졌습니다. 오늘 컨퍼런스에 모이신 인비저블 인스티튜트의 트리나 레이놀즈-타일러 데이터 기사의 시카고 실종 시리즈가 그중 하나입니다. 기술 도입에 대해 줄곧 매우 보수적인 견해를 유지하던 퓰리처상이 AI 활용을 명시적으로 허용한 것은 저널리즘 업계에 시사하는 바가 매우 큽니다. 이제 전 세계 언론사에서는 AI 기술을 뉴스의 제작과 유통 영역 전반에 본격적으로 활용하는 단계에 이르렀습니다. 신기술은 뉴스룸에 새로운 기회를 가져오기도 하지만 동시에 큰 위협으로 다가오기도 합니다. 뉴스 콘텐츠의 대가 산정 문제로 인한 언론사와 기술 기업 간의 갈등, AI 기술이 불러온 허위 정보와 가짜 뉴스의 대응 문제는 아직 언론계가 해결하지 못한 숙제로 남아 있습니다. 이제는 바야흐로 AX, AI 트랜스포메이션, 인공지능 대전환의 시기라 해도 과언이 아닙니다. 지난해에는 AI와 언론의 혁신을 거시적인 관점에서 다루었다면 이번 저널리즘 컨퍼런스에서는 전 세계 뉴스룸에서 구현되고 있는 구체적인 AI 활용 방안, AI와 언론의 바람직한 공존을 위한 대책과 기술이 수반하는 위험에 대한 대응에 대한 심도 있는 논의를 이어갈 예정입니다. AI가 불러온 대변화 영함을 다룰 이번 컨퍼런스에서 기술의 대변화 과정에서도 지켜야 할 언론의 역할과 사명, 휴먼 저널리즘의 가치를 되새겨볼 수 있기를 기대합니다. 마지막으로 컨퍼런스 발표와 대담, 토론을 위해 해외에서 참석해 주신 존 리딩 파이낸셜 타임스 그룹 CEO님, 트리나 레이노스-타일러 인비지블 인스티튜트 디렉터, 아이린 제이류 공용 언론 국제기금 이사님, 앤마리 라핀스키 하버드대 리먼재단 큐레이터, 이베안 셜러 이스펜 연구소 부소장님 그리고 아세안 국제언론 환영합니다. 또한 박장희 중앙일보 CEO님을 비롯해 컨퍼런스 발표와 대담, 토론을 이끌어주신 국내 참가자 여러분도 모두 환영합니다. 바쁘신 시간을 또 쪼개서 참석해주신 여러분께도 진심으로 감사를 드립니다. 오늘 컨퍼런스가 AI가 우리에게 가져올 위기와 새로운 기회에 대해 면밀하게 고민하고 의견을 나눌 수 있는 자리가 되기를 기대합니다.
네, 이상 김효재 한국언론진흥재단 이사장님의 환영사를 들으셨습니다. 이사장님 말씀 감사드립니다.
Now begin the first session of the conference. The keyword of the first session is the innovation and coexistence of AI. In and out of Korea, with the advent of AI technologies, we have to now think about how we are adopting and utilizing AI in journalism sectors. Now we're going to share many new cases of utilizing AI. So we have invited numerous experts in various fields to find out about the cases of utilizing AI in and out of Korea's media industry. Allow me to introduce the first speaker. She's not here with us right now. She won the Pulitzer Award, which is deemed as the Nobel Prize in the journalism sector. She has won the local section award with the article of Missing in Chicago. She dealt with the racial discrimination during the investigation process of the missing African American women. She has demonstrated the illegal activities of police by utilizing AI. She is a data analyst in the Invisible Institute in the journalism sector at the Chicago. So with Ms. Trina Reynolds-Tyler, we are going to listen to the presentation of innovative strategies, adoption, utilization of AI, overseas cases.
Sorry, Tria, actually. Are you ready?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Please proceed.
Hello, my name is Trina Reynolds-Tyler. I'm data director at the Invisible Institute, where we investigate police misconduct using public records requests. I'd like to start with just a map of the South Side of the city of Chicago. At some point, this area of the South Side was the most policed and also had the highest concentration of poverty in the nation. We know through history that Chicago police had actually tortured members of the public. And so one can only imagine what happened in this South Shore corridor in public housing. Here is a photograph of public housing as it was being demolished. Buildings were being demolished while people continued to live within the housing area. there was a group known as the Skullcap Crew who would police that area. They were mentioned in more than 20 federal lawsuits, but they repeatedly received praise from the department. One day in the early 2000s, a woman named Diane Bond encountered this group of law enforcement officers. They forced themselves into her home. They sexually violated her, and they destroyed parts of her home. She got in touch with journalist Jamie Calvin, who was the founder of the Invisible Institute. He, in the process of her lawsuit against the Chicago Police Department, intervened and asked that police misconduct records become public information. Before Diane Bond's story, it was unknown how many people were filing complaints against law enforcement and what the ultimate outcome of those complaints were. Due to his lawsuit, police misconduct records in the state of Illinois are now public record, and it's been that way since 2014. When we initially received that information, the Invisible Institute created the Citizens Police Data Project. This database was meant to make the information more accessible to people. What we learned was there were many people filing complaints against the Chicago Police Department, and that we had a limited insight into what was actually happening. We had access to a primary category, which was actually a bit of a flat way of thinking, about police misconduct in the context where it occurs. The majority of the complaints were labeled as operation and personnel violations, which one could easily dismiss as not very important. On our database, right, the Civic Police Data Project, which you can access by going to cpdp.co, we at the time had use of force data from law enforcement. We had officer profiles where you were able to see the amount of force that an officer used compared to other members. We recently updated it with lawsuits, financials that were paid out to people due to police practice. But through a machine learning project, we were able to parse through underlying records that were associated with this top level information. So when we're looking at the primary category only, we may see something like operation and personnel violation. When you take a deeper look at the underlying document, you may learn something different. So this is an example where a complaint was labeled as operation and personnel violation, but it was actually an incident that was sexual in nature. Law enforcement officer asked the woman to show him her vagina, and that he would let her out the back door. He ultimately pressed on her, sexually violating her, but instead of this allegation being easy to identify as sexual in nature, we were stuck with this operation and personnel violation category. So when we gained access to underlying misconduct records from the years 2011 to 2015, actual documents, we decided to use machine learning to parse through these police misconduct records. How could we use the underlying text to better understand what was going on and like what ultimately was the cause of the police complaint, and to see if there were other people who were maybe filing complaints about the same things, but maybe whose stories had never been looked at side by side. So in January of 2021, I assembled a team in collaboration with the Human Rights Data Analysis Group, and we decided to build a tree-based classifier where we would have volunteers generate training data. And then ultimately, after a score was provided to each complaint record as related to or not related to our interest area, we had humans validate the underlying document as relevant or not. Right. So we started with the documents pipeline team that was, identifying specific report types from those hundreds of thousands of documents. Those report types had narratives on them. Members of our documents pipeline team, in collaboration with the Human Rights Data Analysis Group and the Lucy Parsons Lab, scraped that narrative text and were able to put it in a form that was accessible. we hosted reading groups every week, initially starting with 2 different small groups. One met on Tuesday, one met on Thursday, of women who would read the underlying misconduct narrative in an Excel spreadsheet and then label it as relevant or not relevant. They received an annotation dictionary, which had different definitions for neglect, for sexual violation, for domestic violence, instances within someone's home. Something we really focused on for this part of the project was inter-radar reliability. How often were our labelers actually agreeing with the label that had been provided? This was important because when using machine learning, there are many ways that a machine can interpret a piece of narrative text. And so if our own humans, in a group could not agree on the label of a complaint, how could we believe that machine learning could, or how could we trust that we were actually teaching it, employing it with information to help it label cases? At some point, we received an influx of volunteers. Initially, again, we started with under 10 volunteers, and then by the end of the project, we had a little over 200. We considered different ways when we were engaging with community, how would we define, which labelers were better than others, or we explored different ways of training people virtually to label training data. But then, of course, also at each session, after they labeled the data, they had a conversation about what it is they read, and they created, or they responded to a feedback survey. And then, of course, right, as volunteers are labeling data, there's a little crew of us. We call ourselves Code Review, where we just like sit down with the information that we're collecting regularly. We were looking at the underlying narratives. We were looking at the ways that labelers were labelers were receiving and giving us feedback on what it meant to create this training data. We created a topic model and ultimately built a classifier together. This part of the project it could have been relatively short, but we felt that it was really important to engage in community because we wanted to know, what was interesting to the people who were reading the narratives. They were community members. They were volunteering their time to create training data so that we could more easily explore these like hundreds of these records. And it ultimately ended up being an opportunity for us to see the ways that we could engage with community members using participatory AI. Initially, when we started the project, we were really interested in police sexual violence. I specifically am interested in the intersection between gender-based violence and policing. But even when we gave our volunteer feedback form, they were saying, they began to name some of the things that they wanted to see or wanted to label. We had an enthusiastic group of people, local community members, who wanted to find ways to engage with local journalism in a way that increased their data literacy, also like helped us to better understand this like monumentous, set of information that really felt like, we were swimming in a sea. We ultimately came out with initially we published, police response to sexual assault, police response to domestic violence, because there were so many complaints where people were talking about the same kinds of tactics that law enforcement used, even though they were being used by different officers, alluding to a culture of the way that Chicago police responded to gender-based violence. But I was really specifically interested in digging deeper into the way the Chicago police handle missing persons cases. We identified 54 complaints within that time period that showed that Chicago police had a problem, or there were people who were talking about their frustrations with Chicago police, but many complaints had not been sustained. We even identified one complaint where an off-duty officer who had delivered a child who was a missing girl to a human trafficking sex sting was able to resign, and a different officer was able to, a different officer went to jail for trafficking runaway girls. At that point, I reached out to Sarah Conway at City Bureau. It's another nonprofit journalism organization, also based on the South Side of Chicago. We were really interested in engaging community again around the issue, wanting to really pair data science and narrative justice, finding ways that we could identify leads within the data so that we could paint a full picture of what's going on. You can read our story at ChicagoMissingPersons.com. It was a 7-part series that we actually self-published online, and then we published shorter versions of it with different publishing folks within the Chicago journalism ecosystem, the Chicago Reader, Southside Weekly, and the Tribe. I always like to start talking about the project Missing in Chicago with the police misconduct records, because obviously that's the huge body of information that we used AI in order to parse through these records. When we took a deeper look at these 54 complaints, we noticed that, majority of these complaints were from Black women about their children, that there were allegations that Chicago police had closed the missing persons case before they had been found. And there was even one allegation that Chicago police had disappeared someone's son. But the most prevalent complaint was that Chicago police were denying and delaying cases. Well, one of the first things we did after looking at complaint records was looked at Chicago police missing persons data just to see who was most impacted within this issue area. We found that Black people represent over 2/3 of the population of missing persons cases, but they were specifically Black children who are reported missing most. And when we look at that demographic of Black children, you see that it's really Black girls ages 10 to 20 who are being reported missing the most. So we decided that our reporting would really focus on that population. When we asked Chicago police about, what was going on here, what did they have to say about the way that people were complaining about Chicago police response to missing persons cases, they told us that they investigate these cases equally across race, sex, gender, zip code. But when we looked deeper into their data, we saw they were actually missing data points required for them to evaluate their own response to the issue. There were missing data in 45% of the cases in a 5-year period. And when talking to family members, we learned that there were parts of this, there were families who were told to wait, whose cases didn't even make it into the data the moment they came into the station, only when law enforcement decided they would take these cases seriously. When Chicago police denied and delayed cases, they were actually going against Chicago police directives and state law. So between Sarah and I, we took a look at data, documents, and we spoke to lots of people. Obviously, we, starting from the police misconduct records, we wanted to make sure that we talked to community members to see if their experiences were aligned with, what police misconduct records were saying. We also spoke with Chicago police officials, looked at Office of Emergency Management and Communications. Those are 911 calls and Chicago Police incident reports. Cook County Sheriff's Missing Persons Project, the medical examiner's data, as well as read autopsy reports. And then we fiercely studied the history of Chicago police directives in combination with state legislation to really understand what was supposed to be happening during this missing persons case pipeline and to see what was actually happening. One of the earliest cases that we identified that was really troubling for us and that was very clearly distinct within the data was a case of Shavana Prather. She was a 17-year-old high school student. She was pregnant at the time that she went missing. She went missing on April 19th, 2002, and she was actually murdered that night by the manager at a McDonald's where she worked. A few days later, a Chicago police detective is assigned to her case. Shortly after that, detectives on April 26th, 2002 wrote, they closed her case. They wrote in a report, the missing has been located at a friend's house. That was around 1:00. A few hours later, Shavana's identity appears in the Cook County Medical Examiner's office as a homicide. Her body had been found later that day, and it was very clear who had murdered her, the guy who she was last seen with. He ultimately tortured her before her death. But in her missing persons report, it says that she had been located and was not a victim or offender of a crime. This is just one example of 4 cases we were able to identify where Chicago police actually closed the case before the missing was found. And again, we were able to really identify this because we were able to look at multiple data sets as a means of identifying this person in the pipeline of the missing persons project, of the missing persons pipeline. Another finding we had was that Chicago police had been labeling their missing persons cases. Nearly 100% of them were labeled as not criminal in nature. There were just 300 cases which began as a missing persons project, a missing persons case, and later became reclassified as a homicide. We know that elected officials are using data in order to make decisions about their priorities, but this was a blind spot for our elected officials and our Chicago police as well. We, in that time period that we investigated, there were 10 cases that were actually reclassified from missing persons to homicides, and we were able to identify an additional 11 homicides, instances where the case was clearly associated with a homicide case, but had not actually reflected that in the underlying data, which encouraged people to think that there wasn't actually an issue around people who were being reported missing in the city of Chicago. One person I'd like to mention here is the case of Sonia Rouse. So Sonia was a 50-year-old woman who went missing. She was in a intimate partner violent relationship. This is her mother holding a photo of her in her mother's home. We were told about Sonia's case from Sonia's mother, but also from Bridget Rouse, who was Sonia's sister. Sonia had been in this in this violent relationship with this guy for years. Her mother had described going and picking up her daughter from the house multiple times to get her out of this relationship. She spoke about how her daughter had experienced postpartum depression after giving birth to her child. The detective on her case ultimately never interviewed the man that Sonia was last seen with. And we were able to see this by way of looking at Sonia's underlying records. When we did a little bit of digging, we saw that, this guy had actually been incarcerated at the time that Sonia had been reported missing. He had been released on a work release program, and the detective could have easily interviewed this guy, but he didn't. He dragged his feet, and it was a little over a year later when Sonia's family told the detective that that the man Sonia was last seen with had died, that Sonia's case became suspended. This detective who was on her case had actually a history of domestic violence himself. And when we were taking a look at Sonia's case, her mother kept talking about she had spoken with elected officials, she had written letters, she had taken all the steps that they tell you to take when you are when you're missing, your loved one goes missing, and that the Chicago Police Department just hadn't done a very good job of investigating it. And it was really this Detective Yaversky. This is an image from one of his underlying police misconduct records. After we looked into Sonia's case, we began pulling his misconduct records, and we found that Detective Yaversky was actually a perpetrator of intimate partner violence against his own family. And so, by way of us, not only looking at, Chicago missing persons data and Cook County medical examiner's data, 911 calls, but also police misconduct records, we'll be able to go full circle and see just the different ways that systemic issues of the lack of police accountability play a role in these like very local, granular cases. I wanted to, I feel it's really important to, when we're talking about like using machine learning in journalism. Someone was mentioning earlier, like there's this fear that people might lose their jobs. In the city of Chicago, there's a fear that machine learning and AI may take us further away from the population of people who we're really interested in reporting on and learning from. I think there is, when thinking about police misconduct, there is already this narrative that we look at when someone is shot 16 times by police, or, we think of police misconduct as like physical violence towards someone, when actually, when looking through police misconduct records, we're able to diversify the way we understand police misconduct and how it happens in our society. And so whether we use machine learning to look at police misconduct records or to look at, hospital data or any other like state institution, it was really important that, we were thinking about technology as a means for bringing people together. And so we're firm believers that like the people who we are connected to can help us to be better journalists. We think this is possible through collaboration, obviously, through technical collaborations. I have my master's in public policy from the University of Chicago Harris School. And so I was able to get some programming statistics background, but I would not have been able to do this project without, support from the Human Rights Data Analysis Group and also from community members who were volunteering their time to parse through this really heavy information. By way of engaging with those community members, we were able to like build their data literacy, so help them to understand like what is happening, like what is AI and like machine learning, and that it's not this kind of it doesn't have to be this thing that is so far removed from our lives that we don't actually understand, but can be something that we, engage with. We also, again, digging deep responsibly means like using machine learning and also just like that data science mind to identify investigative leads. Obviously, you can parse through police misconduct records, but also using AI to extract information and organize it is really helpful, especially when you're looking at multiple data sets and can find some way to weave them together. The people who reported on missing persons cases before us, they did not take a look deeper, because if they looked at the data, it said that there was actually no problem. It said that nearly 100% of the cases were not related to crimes. It was only because we were looking at multiple data sets that we were able to really come to some conclusions about how information was being hidden in these underlying records. The folks in this room today will be, identifying data sets, parsing through them, figuring out things that they want to like dig deeper into. And I encourage you to like talk to people and in order to help you understand, what the data is telling you. I think we sometimes have this idea that the data has all the answers, but actually we should be very skeptical of data when it gets in front of us, and we should think critically about what the data generating process is, and if there are any other bodies of information that could help us validate whether or not what this data is telling us is true. And then the last piece is just like how we remain critical of our relationship with technology. I believe there is this desire to identify like technological solutions for problems that might not actually exist. Trying to create the coolest, newest product to say and talk about how we're using AI, when actually what's important is that we find ways to not leave people behind. Obviously, the internet is buzzing now, as the speaker before was saying. People can create their own content fairly easily these days, but we have a repository of history that came before this AI machine learning boom. And I think we should take a step away from attempting to predict what it is that people are going to do, or and maybe take a step into how we can learn from the history that came before us to help us actually reframe our perspective and understanding of issues. There are so much more that we can learn. We can go deeper into journalism. We can go deeper into local communities. We can better understand our audience if we are able to use the data to ask them better questions. And I just want to leave that with you, that like when we're using this technology, it should ultimately be participatory, right? What are the ways that you can bring your audience in? Ultimately, when we published Missing in Chicago, we did a series of reading groups. We had a multimedia video attachment. And then also we continued to engage with our volunteer base who helped us to create this classifier. Those people are ultimately a huge part of our audience who can continue to contribute to the ways that we evolve as journalists, and can help us to keep our connection to people, instead of the take us into this desire to use technology in a way that further tears us apart. Thank you so much.
네, thank you for the lecture, Trina. 저희가 이제 트리나
Now,
레이론스
in
타일러님은
the
잠시
panel
후에
discussion
패널 토론 때
session, we
뵙도록
will
하겠고요.
meet you
혹시
again.
몰라서 제가 간단하게
Let me briefly
트리나에게
give
안내
instructions to Ms.
말씀드리겠습니다.
Trina.
So a panel discussion will follow after the three presentations. Please mute your microphone and I'll see you later for discussion.
Now, moving on, we'll listen to the three presenters' speeches. First, under the title of the Adoption and Utilization of AI Innovative Strategies, we're now going to listen to the case of Korea. Let me introduce three presenters from Korea. First will be Ms. Hyunji Kim, the head of the Business Strategy Management Team at the Future Strategies Institution of Donga Ilbo. Please give her a big round of applause. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Hyunji Kim. I've been working as a journalist for 20 years. 6 years ago, I achieved a master's degree in data science, and that's why I began to work as a data scientist. So, due to limited times, let me be brief about my innovative cases. Please, I would like to ask for the presentation slides to be uploaded on the screen. So last year and this year, the Future Strategy Institute of Ilbo created this chatbot, summarization, and translation and audio services. A total of 4 services were launched last year. Do you have the remote control? Yes, thank you. Usually, when it comes to companies' AI innovation, it's usually pinned down to 2 directions. First is the innovation of customer experience, and second is reducing cost. Now, when it comes to the customer experience, that is providing better experience for the customers, and when it comes to reduction of cost, repetitive tasks will be done by artificial intelligence to boost productivity. Now, the chatbot will go under the category of innovating customer experience. Translation and audio would go under the category of reducing cost, and summarization will go under both of the 2 categories. Now, before I introduce about our services, I must first give you some insights about our data. The Ilbo's Future Strategy Institutes usually deal with business management articles. 15 years ago, we established the Donga Business Review, that is DBR magazine. Currently, we are issuing this magazine. Now, if you look at here, now on the axis Y, we have the in-depthness, the academic capability, and on the X-axis, we have offline and online. Of course, some of you might disagree with this categorization. However, for the Ilbo Business Review, we first started as an offline magazine. So rather than the popularity and timeliness, it's more close to the academic scales and scopes. So I think it's somewhere in between the popularity and the academic capabilities. So in other words, it's not that close to the general public. But meanwhile, in the online sector, platforms like Outstanding, Publi, Filling, all these online media outlets have now appeared as a brand marketing. They have been growing exponentially. Now, when it comes to digital services, we had to launch new products. So when I was working as a journalist, I thought to myself that it would be really great if I had a chatbot, because the issues are revolving very quickly, and if we do not update ourselves, then we will not be able to know about the current issues and current affairs. And I've been doing a lot of reports on economic and industrial fields, but I was already busy enough to update myself with the recent issues. And sometimes if I did not keep in track with all the changes happening in the society, I was not able to write new articles. So I wish that I had some kind of chatbot that could update me. So when I joined DBR, I really needed a chatbot because I could not read all those articles one by one. I wish that some kind of assistance could organize and demonstrate the articles. And last year, with the launch of ChatGPT, I thought to myself that maybe if I train ChatGPT with the data of the Ilbo, then I will be able to actually organize and update myself. So let me give you a brief overview. Now, this is the website of the DBR. So on the top right, you can see this chatbot. I have to first log in. Excuse me. So, because I usually do not make the settings of this chatbot, so allow me to give you some apology. Now, this is the homepage, the website of the DBR. So, depending on the quality, the size may get bigger or smaller, but this is the chatbot that we have. Now, if you sign in to the website, so whether it's subscription-based or free policy, you can use the chatbots anyway. Now, once you logged in, for example, if you input questions about business management issues, for example, what would be the rational way to evaluate and calculate the annual salary of a CEO? That would be the question that I will be inputting here. So I hope the answers could come out. Well, oh, it's too short. Well, there's sometimes where the answer gets long or sometimes it gets short. It's like a human being, so it depends on its mind. So as you can see, it has been pinned down to 3 lines. So as you see here on the screen, it says that the annual salary should be based on efficiency. So here you get the answer. Now the distinctive feature of our chatbot is this article URL. Now we only have this one article link here, but usually it provides 5 URLs that the chatbot has taken into account as it gave us the answers. So if you click on the links, you can see the resources. That is the article. Now this article is about the innovation of capitalism. So you can see the chatbot has provided us with the output based on this article. And as you skim through this article, you can check additional information and hallucinations. Now, because I have logged in with my ID, I am able to read all these articles. But if you do not have subscription plan for the free users, you'll not be able to read the articles. And this is the revenue model that we have. If you want to read all the articles, then you have to subscribe. Now please return to the PowerPoint slides. Next page, please. Now let me talk about the distinctive feature of our chatbot. So the users can actually fact check the answers from the chatbots by going into the article links. Now, one of the things that concerns us is the hallucination. I think this is the prevalent, a chronic issue regarding LLM. Even the large language model created by a big enterprise such as Google has hallucination issue. Now, this is the question that I asked to Gemini. That is, how many stones should I eat a day? It answered that you have to eat at least 1 stone because it is a vital source of minerals and vitamins. Now, I wondered about the reference. Now, I've heard that snails have to eat stones, so this is the hallucination that we can face. Now, because we do not have a reference source, we cannot actually check the facts. Of course, there could be some hallucinations with the Joonghyun's chatbots, but it provides us with the URL links so that the user can actually check the facts. And also to strengthen the expertise, it also provides you with a textbooks of the business management. So here it provides about 14 sources and books. So for example, please explain about the correlations between the foreign exchange rate and interest rates. Now, I'm not sure whether they could be answered in the DBR algorithm itself, but it took the reference of this writer, Park Young-seo. And this reference is from the second source, that is the Fundamentals of Economics for Koreans. And if you click here, it gives you the excerpts from the books. And another distinctive feature is that it can also provide the reference documents of the Ilbo news articles. And this was not in function last year, but as we ask questions about the business management, there are sometimes users ask about the social issues, so we decided to provide the DBR articles as well. So for example, if I ask the chatbots about the war between Israel and Hezbollah, then it finds the source from Ilbo articles. And based on these articles, it made the answers. So if the user clicks the articles, they can check whether the answer is hallucinated. So far, I talked about the ideas and the services. And from now on, I'm going to talk about how we actually materialize this service. This year is the second round of our chatbot usage. So there was a time when we overall fixed the chatbot from the beginning. That is, if you look at here, to simply put it, we have the RAG, that is the retrieval augmented generation, and then we have the foundation model, that is LLM. So the answer comes from LLM, and we have the RAG, that is the knowledge database. So with the foundation model and LLM and the RAG, there comes the answers. So last year we used the what is called SLLM, the small LLM. Now when it comes to SLLM, it is small in scale compared to LLM, but it provides a simple and efficient answers. But we used about 13 billion SLLM, the 1.3 billion, 13 billion parameters of SLLM. So compared to ChatGPT's large parameters, we are smaller in number. But this year, we changed as we advanced our models. Now, this was a huge transformation for the DBR. Now, to explain why we made a change, to simply put it, it was a really difficult process. In the beginning of last year, when we were undergoing a first round of using the chatbots, we faced two options, that is using API or coming up with our own AI. Now, when it comes to API, that is, we harness the OpenAI's GPT AI for our in-house chatbot. And by coming up with our own AI, we're coming up with our own LLM by fine-tuning. Now, using API is easy, but coming up with our own SLLM was time-consuming. So DBR boldly chose the option of coming up with our own SLLM. Why? Well, because for SLLM, we can suffice lack of data. So last year, the major concerns were that if we input our data, it could be leaked to the OpenAI service channels, and there could be a leak of privacy and confidential information. So these security issues were major concerns. So if we come up with our own SLLM, then we will not have to worry about such things. And also, we couldn't actually assess the total cost of using API. That's why we decided to use SLLM. Now, after we invented our first round of chatbot, it lacked proficiency in coming up with answers. I thought there would be some issues with SLLM, because when you compare the LLM and SLLM, well, LLM can be comparable to the university student, and SLLM could be compared to as an elementary student. So if we input the same question, the LLM comes with high quality answer. Sometimes the SLLM comes with low quality of answers. So that was the trouble that we faced. There was also an issue with servers, because in order to operate SLLM, we require server, and the cost of using the server was skyrocketing. So last year, I'm pretty sure that you all read the articles about the rising cost of GPU, and the price of GPU cards rose greatly. Once we ordered the GPU, we had to wait about 4 to 5 months for the delivery, and because the cost was high and the function was low, it was really difficult to provide services, but at the same time, we had to advance our chatbots. So we were thinking whether to continue with the SLLM system. So boldly, we decided to transform into LLM. I think this was a new attempt for the journalism company. It would be different for big enterprises like Samsung Electronics, but we ambitiously decided to transition into LLM-based system. So the challenge that we faced was to advance our functions and features of the chatbot. That's why we transitioned into LLM. And it was all thanks to the support and the cooperation from the Korea Press Foundation. The KPF has the chatbot named Big Kinds. So we decided to align our chatbots with this Big Kinds AI. How do we do that? Well, if you look at here, you have this AI Big Kinds chatbot. Then we copied and pasted this chatbot for our Ask-based chatbot. That is, we used the frame of the AI Big Kinds chatbot. And it led to the reduction in cost because what we only had to do was customizing this AI Big Kinds chatbot so there would be lower cost of production and management for operating chatbots from the beginning. So that's what we used last year, and also among the databases of the Korean Press Foundation, we partially borrowed the articles of Donghwa Daily and used as a database for our chatbot. So that was the explanation of our chatbot. Second, let me give you explanations about our summarization service. This is one of the examples of the technologies that we are providing. So first, for the summarization, we utilize LLM because we had difficult times with SLLM. So we decided to start with LLM in the beginning. Now, for the summarization service, there were constant demands about this feature because many users were calling out for the need of service that can summarize long articles. Now, for example, if you take college exam during the subject of writing essays, it's really time-consuming process. So we decided to make AI write the articles and summaries for us. Now, if we input the articles into the ChatGPT, you can get summarized version. Why do you have to pay the money for that? Why? Well, because if you do it as a free policy, then the quality of summary would go down. For lengthy articles, the ChatGPT summarizes the articles in a false way. It omits all the important core messages. So it requires repetitive summarization. So that's why we try to have a subscription version for the summarization. So here, our summarization service is provided in two ways. One is essay style and the other is core message note style. Now this is the revenue structure. Because we outsource this development to a specialized companies. So first we decided to share our profits with the producers and the developers of the chatbots. Now here comes the question. Then for the users, how much would they be willing to pay to use this summarization service, and how much cost would be ideal for the DBR so that it will not face any loss of profit? So I cannot tell you everything because of confidential. But here you see the 3 digits. It was not 1, 2, or 3. That is, we've initially thought that the users would not pay this much money to actually use the summarization service. So in the beginning, I thought this would not have any commercial features for us to bring profits. So for the summarization service, although it's based on AI, we notified our users that it does not generate a new summarization all the time. So this year's May, the summarization service has been launched, and we did a pilot testing for 3 months. And during the pilot testing, we have about 3 digital service products. And for those who purchased these products, 88% of them, So 88% of them chose this summarization service. And in fact, we are making money out of this summarization service. So if the user pays about 3,000 won, then they can use this summarization service. Although it's a small in amount, we have gained a new profit structure. Now we have the audio and translation service. For the translation and audio, we harness the applications that have already existed, such as DeepL, and as for audio, we also use the currently existing application models. Now, these things were actually done by human resources, but because of the profit and cost issue, we were able to save a lot of cost as we made the applications to do translation and audio. So we were able to reduce the cost by 1/10. So we were able to save a lot of costs. So for the audios, when our users take the subway or when they drive, they can use the audio services. And before they go to bed, they can listen to our audio services for a deep sleep. So far, in official conferences, I mentioned such things and relevant features of DBR chatbots. And additionally, I would like to add something more because I have about like 5 minutes right now. Now, when it comes to artificial intelligence, it actually makes us chaotic. We have to think about the investment, the human labor of inputs, and also the time that will be consumed. Now, although we make investments, there could be no profits in return. So, in the end, the return of investment is crucial here. So, in line with the time and money that has been consumed, there should be a clear return. If not, then we will not be able to persuade our boss to adopt AI. So, I would like to suggest here is that there is a method called MVP. This is the term that is widely used in the startups industry. That is minimizing the risk in an uncertain market and with minimized investment, launching the product at a fast pace and verifying the quality of the products. Now, when there's a will, do not attempt to make sports cars. When there's a will, make a skateboard first, and if the skateboard is lucrative, then put a handle, then make it into a bicycle with a larger wheel, and then adopt a motor to make it into a motorcycle, and then finally make it into a sports car. So here, the emoji is frowning, but instead you have to follow the models that is here in the below. So rather than following the complex path, you have to go step by step. So last year, when we were providing the summarization services, the developers made one suggestion, that is, I think we developers can do more than summary. Because summarization itself is a small amount of service. Now, why don't we draw a big picture for the DBR chatbot? So, in fact, when we are painting those big pictures, the time has passed really quickly. It went about 2 months. Then what would be the big picture here? Well, we couldn't grasp the idea. So I think we tried to first start with the summarization service. So within 3 months and a half, we were able to launch the summarization service. So I think you do not have to focus and head for the big goals from the beginning. And do not be a perfectionist. Do not expect perfection. Because the AI technology is advancing quickly and the market is also changing at a rapid pace. So currently, even though we have a perfect product, it would be imperfect 2 years or 3 years later. Then in this case, how will we be able to build a perfect product? By the way, today is the KSAT day, and so I have a 7th grade child. So let's say if you have a 7th grade child, if you do not want to study, then do not start it at all. If you're not willing to go to Harvard, then do not start it at all. Do something different. So this is the same for AI development. So if you want to develop AI, we have to move like startups. You have to give up the perfections of AI. Of course, this is something that is really different from the essence of the journalism. Because when it comes to media and journalism, we have to think something in diverse perspective. But this is really time-consuming. Now, if you look at this photo, it's a burning Pentagon image. So there was an explosion in the Pentagon, but it has been discovered that this was a generated image it is a fake image. So on the right, in the Naver search engine, I inputted some weird terms here, and here you get the results. Now, do you know what these blogs are? Well, some users of the blogs use these kind of resources that have not been identified. That was just randomly from the LLM. So in the era of AI, writer Hwang mentioned this earlier, there will be a lot of changes that we would witness. Now, when it comes to the issue of trusting social media, we have to think about how much the people would actually believe in the social media. My daughter is in the 7th grade. She enjoys watching YouTube, but she does not trust those videos fully. She just takes it into a reference. I think this will be same for other people. I think the biggest asset for the journalist is that we have the trust. I think this was also witnessed during the pandemic. People do not gain information from social media or YouTube. Instead, they access to legacy media to get accurate information. I think these assets, these factual information is something that we can utilize. So the future is hazy, but one thing is for certain. So a broadcasting company, the news company should narrow the distance with the readers by utilizing AI. And if we cannot find a way to directly interact with readers, then the AI big tech will replace us. And it will become an era where we are subordinated by the AI big techs. Then the individual media outlets will become a content provider, a mere data provider. So by doing various small projects simultaneously, we have been attempting doing many projects, and we also witnessed failures, and we have been making numerous attempts to go against challenges. So that comes to the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for providing us very insightful information within the limited times. So thank you once again. So please give her a big round of applause once again, ladies and gentlemen. Let's move on to the next speaker. He is Joonghyun, reporter from Chosun newspaper. So please come forward to the stage. Everyone, please give him a big round of applause once again. Hello, everyone. I'm Joonghyun from Chosunilbo. So I believe that all the multiple speakers provide us very insightful information regarding the transition of the AI in the world. I'm very short on the knowledge related to the expert in AI fields. Rather, I will focus on the experiences that we utilize the AI technology in the newsroom. Overall, across the globe, there's a exponentially increase in the attention over the AI, and this is the case in the journalism as well. AI, Ms. Kim already mentioned that DBR services with utilizing the AI technology, I think you can already see the examples that we are witnessing the increased utilization of the AI technology in the journalism. So I think that is one of the reasons why we are using the AI technology is because we are suffering from the shortage of the laborers as well. So this is the survey results. So in 2017, per head, per reporter, this is the number of the articles that the one reporter writes, increased from the 22 to 25. And then the second graph is about the questions that we ask to the reporters, the reliance of the reporters in terms of the writing, scale up to the 5. This is a result. And then this is also the trends in the global as well as in our news agency as well. So we introduced a new technology which is the new CMS in 2020, which changed a lot of environments. So in the past, we only focus on the print papers, and only certain departments are focused on the online articles. But before the new CMS, one reporter handled 120 to 130 news for the papers, but now we have the number increased to 300 or over. And not just the articles released online, we have a newsletter and appearance in the YouTube channels, and then there's a long list of the additional jobs given to reporters. So to increase the efficiency so that the reporters can secure the more times for the reporting, we developed the assistants, AI assistants writing an article. Chosun AI writing article assistance has been developed. So for 3 months, we started the development, and then after 3 months of development, we started last year, and then POC was tested to test whether it is function well or not. So for us, it was very important to test whether it functioned well or not, so we proceeded the whole process faster way. And then, so this is created based on the ChatGPT 3.5, and then it learned 50K number of the articles in the economy industry of our news agency. And then TF comprises of the more than 10 reporters, and then with the feedback, the AI assistant have been developed. On the right side, this is a very early stage of the screens that we had for the Chosun AI article generator. So the headline comes first, and then description, and the upload of the report articles, and then you can also decide the length of the whole article. So after the development, actually, when we use that fixtures, we set the criteria. So this is only allowed to be used for the certain reporters who have more than a certain years of experience, because we had the concerns, a diminishing capability of the rookie reporters to develop their own capability if they use heavily depending on the AI technology. So we limited the use of the AIs to the certain reporters with the season 1, and then they also limited limitations to scope of the application of the AI, and then also once that they use the AI technologies, they have to label it as an AI-generated article. So there's a multiple feedback. So I put the positive feedbacks. So in terms of the according to the feedbacks, AI is better than the 1 or 2 year old experience reporters when it comes to the Straits article, for example. But among the seasoned reporters, they think that we are better than AI. So it's more hectic to use the AI technology. I rather write the articles on my own. That is also one of the feedback that we got. So in the process, we found that some of the parts that we need to improve. In the early version of that, the assistance, we had a POC version, so we trained some of the articles that we wrote in terms of the industry and economy. So if we try to write an articles out of that scope, the quality was not good. And then especially recently, the politicians wrote the social networks or the comments left on online, or sometimes if the AI is writing the articles related to very complex contextual documentation, for example, the legal documents, there's parts that we need to improve further. And also for some articles, it used the inappropriate expressions that is not widely used in the editorial. For example, this is a case where the conflicts between the medical staff led to the violence and remind us of the importance of the ethics and communications within the medical community, for example. So I'm not sure whether it is a usable or not. The sentence below is also the same case, but in my case, I don't rarely use these expressions used in those two sentences. So based on our analysis, we found some points that we need to improve, and then as we thought through the process, we got the opportunities to join the new project. So we decided to make the assistance advanced. So in this project, we trained additionally the 400,000 number of the news related to the comments from the politician and the complex documents, for example, the legal documents. So once we put the description paper, the AI wrote very detailed articles by reflecting all the contextual information. And after the initial versions of our assistance released, ChatGPT itself had been developed a lot. So we thought whether we should reflect the new version of the ChatGPT or more developed one or not. So we compared the results before and after. So Claude's sonnet from Entropy is a little bit better. So we changed from the ChatGPT to Claude sonnet version. So advanced assistance has been used by the multiple users, and then according to the feedback from the users, they give us the positive feedbacks. In the initial versions, if we quote a certain sentence, the ChatGPT failed to use that quote in the results of answering to the questions. And also, we got the feedback for the later version of the assistance that there's still parts remaining to improve in terms of the meaning interpretation. And then the legal parts wrote a report, so we uploaded that report to this assistant. So this is a result. So the first one, there's an unknown man, but I'm not sure for the other. But the unknown man itself, it is a weird expressions that we use in our agency. So, but it is not that weird to prevent the article to be released. It's walking on the fine line. So that shows the assistance have been developed a lot. So this is the implications that we found in the process of developing the assistance. Of course, that is a cliche, but the higher quality discussion paper is put, the quality of the results would be better. Then somebody might ask, why should I use the AI technology to write articles if it needs the better quality of the discussion paper? So in my case, I wrote the discussion papers to be reported to my boss, and then I used that same paper exactly to the AI assistants. Then we can reduce the time of the whole process. So that's a way I'm using this assistance, for example. And then let's say the discussion paper is short, so it is not sufficient to extend the whole article into the longer form. So in that case, there's some cases where we found that it created or put a little bit awkward expressions or the sentence to make it longer. So that is the one problems that we found. And then definitely, I think it is true that even when the assistants created the articles, that the men should monitor and review, because sometimes they made mistakes or misunderstanding the number of numbers like a date or it sometimes fails to recognize whether it's a past or the future. Or sometimes they made a mistake with the titles as well. So I thought that if I cover only our AI assistants, the presentation might be too short. So I'm going to share the cases from my colleagues and other reporters' experience. So one of my colleagues is using the AI technology to create the newsletter, which is the most remarkable case for me. So put the certain certain sentences to the customize the GPTs, and it created the interview. So it is not just a very boring articles. It is more about intended to create a content. So I think that is because he is intended to create a content rather than the article news. Maybe it is appropriate for him to use the AI technology for them. And currently also the reporters can use the AI platforms and technologies to transfer the voice into the text directly. So if you have the video of the interview, and then if you use the AI technology, you can directly transcribe that voice into the text. That reduces the whole time. So I think that it is widely used across the globe as well. And then I consulted with the editors as well, and then they are using the AI technology for the graphic creation, so image creation. So Midjourney or DALL-E are widely used to create an image, and then with the results image, they're editing the result image by themselves, but the total amount of the times that they should have spent is reduced. And then in our company, the general AI subscription fee is supported in half by the company for all the employees. And then the reason why we are supporting half only is because of the concerns that if we support the subscription fee, that they only subscribe the technology and they don't use. So that's why we cover only half. So I'm involved in the process of the development of assistants, and in the process, the other cases used in the other companies I heard, and I took the interview for the other cases in other companies. So based on that interviews and my survey, I would like to share my own thoughts related to this matters with you. So first, regardless whether it's the platform or the other channels, I think the actual case studies or the cases where the peoples are using the AI technology in the journalism should be widely shared to the larger audience. So I actually attended some conference, and then one of the speakers shared some technologies or tips that we can use and apply to our works. And at the time I learned a lot. Some of the technologies are really good for us to increase the efficiency in the overall workload. So I thought that how to apply that cases to the journalism, whether it's possible or not, and if possible, how to apply that to the journalism. So in a broader scope, if there's any best cases or the examples where the people already use the AI technology in a successful manner, I think it would be helpful for those cases to be shared with the bigger audience in our fields. And then what kind of the generated AI can be used is one of the questions that I've been asked commonly. So related to AI, the competence of using the AI technology quite vary depending on the person to person. So if the news agency or the organization can provide the education sessions for the utilization of the AI technology to the employees, that would be also helpful. And the third one is that I think we need to cooperate with the experts in the AI technology. So journalism process, for example, internal situation is not widely exposed to other people. So it is very hard to provide the tips how we can use the AI technology within the journalism settings to the AI experts and vice versa as well. So in best scenario, for 6 months, for example, if we can hire the experts in the AI technology involved in all the process of the creation of the articles, production and distribution from morning to the nighttime, that's the best. But it is not possible. So in which part, what technology can be used to increase the efficiency, that should be consulted by the AI experts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So that was Mr. Usung. Yes, that was the An Joonghyun from the Chosun Daily. Now, I kind of gave you some challenge, so I understand your passion, but because we have a limited amount of time, please stick to the given time. That would be grateful. Excuse me, yes, I introduced the speaker wrongly, so that was the presentation from journalist An Joonghyun. Now we have Mr. Seungho from the Seoul Economic Daily. Now we'll listen to the last presenter's presentation. Please give him a big round of applause. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Seungho from Seoul Economic Daily. So today I'm going to explain about the Seoul AI Nexus. So it is consisted of 4 models: AI Prism, AI Source, AI Writer, and AI Radar. Now for the AI Prism model, it customizes the consumers. It recommends the relevant articles. As for the AI Source, it summarizes the scripts for the generation of different age group. And for the AI Writers, it gives optimized articles and also recommends various headlines. As for the AI Radar, it monitors the economic indicators in real time. So all in all, AI Nexus increases the efficiency of the news quality. AI Writer and AI Prism customizes and provides tailored services to the reader. So I'll explain about each model. First is AI Prism. Now, Prism stands for Personalized Report and Insight Summarizing Media. That is, it gives insight and provides news tailored to individual readers. It recommends the articles and it also summarizes and analyzes the articles. Now, the option of the media outlets are now given to the readers. So depending on the readers' choices, they can read the articles they would want. So the Seoul Economic Daily inputs the articles to the AI Prism, and then it provides the articles in a segmented way depending on their expectations of the users. Now, this is the structure of the AI Prism. By the way, AI Prism has been developed with the support from the Korea Press Foundation. Thank you for that. So basically, AI Prism organizes the articles of Seoul Korea Economic Daily, and once it is demonstrated and organized, whether the reader is a student, a new employee, or depending on the age group, it provides a customized news. So every twice a day, it organizes the articles, and once it is inputted to AI, then you can also select the categories here, depending on whether you're a student, job seeker, or an employee. And the articles are summarized and recommended to each category of jobs. And by utilizing the AI, we evaluate the significance of the articles, and we also provide customized summarization of the articles. So for the high school students, they value news about the college entrance exam. As for the new employees, they focus on the loans, and as for the micro business owners and self-employed, they care about the loans and cars. So as you can see, they provide recommended articles and AI Prism. You can use this in D-Log, So go into the App Store, and once you download the D-Log, then you can use this AI Prism service. It was launched a day before. So if you go inside the D-Log, you click here in the section where you can see the summarized news. And if you select a category, depending on your affiliate, such as whether you're a middle school student, high school student, job seekers, university students, employees, and depending on each job category, you can watch the articles tailored to your needs. Likewise, AI Prism targets various scope of readers, and it provides tailored analysis and recommendations. So from the teenagers to the retirees in their 60s and also to the foreign workers, it recommends articles tailored to each individual's needs. So I usually compare this to the dough of the flour. So by using the dough, you can make a rice cake, a pizza tailored to the audience needs. So in the past, we usually recommended the articles based on articles or keywords. AI Prism is different. So, for example, a chef can recommend the dish that you like, and depending on my health status, the chef can also recommend the meals with proficient and high nutrition. Likewise, not only the articles that falls under the interest of the readers, it also provides the articles that could be helpful to the readers, giving more insights. Next, I'll explain about the AI Shorts. AI Shorts is a customized news summarization model that is on the same eye level of the readers. Now, AI Prism is a summary and the recommendation of the articles, but AI Shorts focuses on individual articles. So I have just mentioned about the flour doughs. Well, I think AI Prism can only make donuts, but well, AI Prism can create about like 3 big giant-sized cakes, and so AI Shorts is usually focused on young people, but depending on the categories of the age group, such as 30s or 20s or the foreigners, it provides different shorts tailored to the needs. If you go to the Naver TV, you can use this AI Shorts. So if you type in these hashtags such as Seoul Economic Daily channel, or we also have other 4 channels. So if you go inside here, you can view these shorts. Like I've mentioned earlier, these shorts provides the articles customized to the readers. So for example, the Seoul Economic Daily provides insights depending on the age group, whether it's a teenage group or a 20s or 30s. And as also KFOMO News provides an insight about the global investment, and at the same time it provides articles in English. Now, if you input the articles in the prompt, it creates the scripts in line with the shorts. And also, these scripts are then inputted to the template and create videos and uploaded. So it takes about 5 minutes. The AI Shorts was first launched in April 22nd. So throughout the 200 days, so far, the view accounted for more than 20 million. So in the day 1, we began with 1 shorts. But with the Seoul Economics, Seoul Gija and KFOMO and these health puzzle, it all started in different days. But as you can see, the health puzzle creates about like 40 a day. That is about 200 a week, and in a month that will be about 1,000 content. So in a week, we recorded about 1.2 million views, and for a month, we recorded higher views. And this is in charge of 2 intern reporters. So these 2 interns are in charge of all these millions of contests. Now I'm going to move on to AI Writer. Now the AI Writer creates online articles, and it provides the optimized layouts and titles to the mobile settings. So when we transform the coverage articles or the foreign articles, it transforms into online articles. So first, it makes the Seoul Economic Daily into online articles, and it also makes the other foreign articles into text. So there are different materials and content of the article. So depending on the type of the article, it has these different characteristics: the fidelity, the hooking, the inducing, the optimization, and also sharing to the social media. So just like the vending machine, if you choose the optimized version, then you can choose the correct one. So as you can see, the fidelity article writing it sticks to the objectivity and accuracy. As for the hooked article, it focuses on the balance of entertaining and informing. So starting from 21, is usually focuses on multilingual articles, that is changing the multilingual articles into Korean language. So from number 21, it switches different language into Korean articles. And if you input the articles or online articles, it also recommends the headlines. So if you input the online articles, if you look at the red box here, it provides you the main part about the articles that is a click type online articles. So because it is lengthy, it shortens into several paragraphs, and because it also have professional IT terms, if you input the articles, then it also explains about these professional terms. Of course, we cannot include these explanation about the terms in the written newspaper, but we can add this in the online newspaper. It also provides summarization services for these articles. Now, this is the model that recommends the headlines. So if we input the articles, it recommends a 5 type of headlines according to each different type. So you can see here it provides 5 different types of headlines depending on the articles, and it also explains why it has chosen this title and headline. And also when it comes to the categories of our articles, the keywords and titles are important. So because journalists cannot categorize all of these articles, if we use this AI writer, it recommends the optimized keywords or titles. The headlines can also be divided into different types. So in different various types, it recommends the headlines. As for the AI writer, it utilizes agentic workflow. It creates the themes, and depending on the workflow, it creates optimized output. And once we put the input, it comes up with optimized output and results. Next, let me explain about AI Radar. Now, AI Radar is an assistance to the journalist that raises the efficiency of our work. So the real-time news and major economic indicators and business insights are provided. As for the economic indicators, it provides information about the trends of the FX, the global economic market, and major enterprise activities. So to do so, here, as you can see, we have analyzed the won and dollar FX rate, and we asked it to write a report for us in the AI Radar and also analyze the FX trends. And based on the politics of the domestic market and as well as overseas and on other countries, and based on today's release of the statistics and other indicators, we ask for the analysis of this new information. And here on the right, you can see it cracks down into 10 categories and keywords. So just like the foreign exchange, it also provides information about the global economic market, major enterprise market, as well as other information. So far, I talked about the AI Prism, AI Shores, AI Writer, and AI Radar, and so AI Nexus. So starting from last March, I have been operating this so far. And one of the things that I learned was that AI is not an end, it's the beginning, and the result is only an ingredient, so the chef will be the journalist. So in the end, the decision-making process and editing of the journalist will be crucial. So as we move forward, we often refer LLM AI as a probability parrot. So AI is a mere tool. The crucial part here is the user. That is, it is essential to train the journalist in the right way. And AI only does what it has been given, so the user has to spearhead the change and make access to the artificial intelligence. The journalist has to be proactive. And AI has an innate hallucination, so we need constant testing and updates. So in the end, to enhance the efficiency of newsroom, to improve the content's quality, and also to optimize the reader's experience, in order to achieve all these goals, we need to train the journalists and also proactive participation from the journalists, and also we need constant testing and updates of the journalists. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, and especially thank you for the finishing your presentations within allowed time. So with all three speakers and with the speakers, Trina, through Zoom, we will continue to have panel discussion. So I will hand over to Hwang who is a professor from the Media Communication Department of the Konkuk University. So for those 5 panelists, we are setting the seats and tables. So during that time, I would like to make announcements once again. So filming or recording is completely banned during the conversation. So please be minded. And then if you leave this room, please put your receiver for the interpretation on your seat or returning back to the reception desk. And for the smart Q&A, during the session, if you have any question, you will find the QR codes on the leaflet or on screen. So you can scan this QR codes so that you can upload the question in the real time. Then we will read out for you your question. So I think we are ready for the seats. So please let's invite all the panelists to this front. So based on the experiences for the utilization of the AI technology in the newsroom, we invite all of the panelists to Trina and all 3 panelists from Korea and also Professor Hwang. I will hand over to Mr. Hwang. I'm a moderator. I'm Hwang Yong-seok, professor from the Media Communication Department of the Konkuk University. Today, I was really impressive to hear all the insightful presentation, and when we prepared this conference, I believe that all the individual panelists take on the individual very important agenda. So we heard a lot of insights for the presentation given by Trina. She shared the experiences and cases of using the data analysis technologies for our analysis cases, and also Chosun newspapers, CMS, and other very aggressive efforts also have been shared. And then Mr. Wu also provide and share the cases, the actual cases of the multiple AI machine and platforms. So we got only 20 minutes. It was supposed to be 40 minutes. So please understand the limited time. So I would like to ask a question first to Trina. So please understand me speaking Korean. So there's a lots of articles covering the missing in Chicago. And then this is also impressive because in the process of using the data analysis technology, I think this is the best case that we can use the AI technology into the journalism. And then thanks for your detailed explanation. So to summarize what you just explained, so you said that it is a communication-driven engagement is very important. And then so that how to select the agenda in terms of the engagement of the readers. I think your cases is the very best successful cases to show that how to respond to. And then you also use the clouding techniques. Also, you increase the engagement of your volunteers up to the 200s for the labeling, for example. So when you work with the human rights groups, the data So I think that you use the groups also to prove all the data analysis. So I think this is very best the case that we can refer to. So you're focusing on the cooperation, engagement of the community. So in that process, I would like to ask 2 questions related to that. So please answer to the question in short comments. So in the Korean and also the other countries, as journalists, the job of the journalist itself, it's a kind of like a watchdogs against the cooperation. So in the nature of that, it is very hard to cooperate. But in contrast, counterintuitively, you made a successful cases in the cooperation. So AI journalists and experts in the AI technology. So I believe that through your cases, I think we are heading toward the cooperation of all the experts. How to induce those cooperation actively from the multiple parties? What's the know-how to make this successful? And then second is that the results of what you created itself, it is the content that has an impact on the society overall. So what's the consensus as a journalist or in the journalism that you reached out to do so?
Thank you so much. I didn't catch your second question, but I'll quickly respond to your first. It was, you discussed we are journalists. We essentially watch the watchdog. Sometimes people believe, we use AI because we're just monitoring the signals that a system is already emitting. But really, it's important that we dig deeper into some of these signals that state officials, institutions have been claiming in order to more deeply understand what those signals mean. And so, just on the piece of collaboration and determining, what the issue areas we would focus on, I think one, we wanted to make sure that we explored the issue area from different perspectives than traditionally. We wanted to analyze the police system in a systemic way and see if we could actually measure what law enforcement was saying. And then because we are in this local journalism, nonprofit news, we are constantly engaging with community members, not only online, but also in person. And that plays a role in how we understand, how we deepen our inquiry. The last piece I'll say is, Chicago police, we spoke to many Chicago police officers for this story. They had to speak to us anonymously because if some of them, if they had spoken to us on the record, they would have lost their jobs. And so it required us building a lot of trust, not only with community, but also with some of these officials within the system so that we could have access to information and more easily interpret the data.
No, so you mentioned about the second question, but I think you answered the question from your previous answer. So one of the technical questions is that when we are making training data in various documents, we first transition from simple codings to multi-layer codings, or we have been expanding the size of those codings. Now, I think here, when it comes to crowdsourcing environment, sustaining this quality was really important. And I think this was challenging. That is, in order to lessen the bias of the data, what kind of efforts were made?
In order to, we only have, we have access to police misconduct records. That is like our initial source of information. Like obviously, this is complaint records. And so there are different areas of interest within it. I think as it relates to, so when we initially approached the project, we wanted to look at the intersection between gender-based violence and policing. I think on this piece around individuals who are reading the narratives and generating the training data, we gave them very clear definitions. And then that's where that inter-radar reliability piece was really key. Multiple people who were looking at the same narrative, defining it as the same, and then also taking a moment not to just, look at the complaint, see that it exists, and say, well, this is real, this happened, but to look at these complaints as breadcrumbs for future investigations that we did, right? Those 54 allegations of misconduct ultimately were the breadcrumbs necessary to do a deep investigation into Chicago missing persons pipeline. Now, the goal wasn't how do we make sure everything in these complaints that were said, we find the people to say those things. The goal was, what is the data saying? Now, what are people saying? What are elected officials and law enforcement saying? How do these things come together to paint a full picture of what's occurring?
Yes, so if we have an opportunity in the future, maybe you could send us the document file of these projects in summary so that Korean journalism institutions can learn from your cases. So I've also read this about this, and I was really surprised. It was more than just simply creating data or creating structures of data flow. In this case, these attempts were something that we have not seen in Korean cases. And data projects and these machine learning projects, I think this is one of the successful cases that we could see in this era. I was really touched by your attempt. Thank you. Now, moving on to the Korean speakers, I'll give you some questions. So first of all, yes, Miss Kim Hyunji. So I think in some way you have made attempts for SLLM, and that was because you studied the data science by yourself. Now, you mentioned about the two approaches. So that is making small LLM on your own, and also another one is using API for fine-tuning. Now, for Joseon Daily and Seoul Economics Daily, they chose to go for utilizing the API, but for the Donghwa Daily, you came up with your own SLLM. You gave the explanation in detail, but in some way, as for the Washington Post, it is firstly based on the machine learning, and it is heavily investing on such things. Now, in the long run, what is your perspective? That is, when it comes to the security and confidentiality of the data, it could leak some private information, right? So if we use big tech or LLM, we cannot stop the data going to the outside server. And I do understand the concerns from the big tech companies. So, but big tech companies do mention that they do not use the inflow of data for their own use. So we have no choice but to trust their words. But without those kind of attempts, we will not be able to develop our own services for SLLM. So last year, when we first launched SLLM, we're now witnessing highly advanced SLLM, such as Llama. It has about 70 billion parameters, and I've heard that it's really fluent and efficient. But still, there will be a lot of cost for maintaining the servers. So I'm wondering whether this project can be constantly pursued for us. So in the US, only the Bloomberg has this kind of server. So in the long run, what kind of paths should we unravel? Well, actually, that's the question that I would like to ask to other people. So it's really difficult to predict what would become of our market. But in the long term, I think if the cost of manufacturing SLM will go down, yes. If data security is essential, then we would try to reduce the cost. So we have the NPU for the server, and we also have OpenAI is now cooperating with Intel to come up with new chips. So I think the cost of hardware will also go down. But for now, we cannot know for sure when the cost will actually be reduced. So in some day, we will be able to use SLLM, but for now, I would have to monitor the current trends. Yes. So in some way, I think we are having sovereign AI at the moment. So the SLLM optimized for the journalism and mid-sized and maybe small-size LLM could be utilized by Korean companies. So I think it will be difficult for individual journalism companies to do so. So moving on, I will also ask questions to other people.
Mr. Ans, it was very impressive to hear your presentation. I believe that the AI technologies are widely used to create the articles, but for the basic system, for example, there are some rules for the editing, for example, then the ARC system, if the ARC system is introduced in earnest, like, do you have any code of conduct or criteria that can be used, or is there any standard points that you're making efforts? I believe there's a code of conduct released in Hanguk news agency. And in terms of the utilization of the AI technology, I believe that internally there is definitely the efforts to review the standards, but so far officially there's no such as standards because I believe this is the experimental stage, I think. So Mr. Wu, you explained about the multiple products. For example, curation algorithm. You're not using the behavior data of the users, but the premeditated data for the persona, I believe. I think you use that kind of data. But for the user's behavior, if you use the predated data, then I think there must be the gap between the actual situation and the analysis results. So do you have any data for the feedback from the actual satisfactory level of the users?
So AI Prism has just been launched. So currently we're trying to focus on the centering around the readers. So in that case, the readers have to download the apps and they have to sign an agreement. So it has to notify and give the data on what kind of transportation he uses. So based on such data, it could also provide information. So for example, if I'm about to go to Busan, then I would ask, can you provide information about Busan? If I'm going overseas, can you provide information about the country? Then in order to do so, we need prior consent from the user. So right now, this is the first step, and then we'll move on to the next step in the future. So this is the this is the joint question to the Korean speakers. So as I was listening to the presentations of Mr. An and Mr. Wu, I've realized that the number of technologies being developed by AI has exponentially increased, and this is giving pressure to the journalist. Now, in the era of automation and AI technologies, when it comes to the production and distribution of news content, I think it is exponentially increasing. Amidst such situation, what kind of values should be pursued by the journalism industry? Now, please give your answers freely. Okay, that is a really tough question to answer. For me, I think in the end, I think it depends on how we provide curation. Now, when it comes to selecting the articles and reading the articles, that would be the role for the consumers. But in order for us to be selected by the consumers, I think we have to come up with creative contents that is a unique contents. So Mr. Song mentioned during the keynote speech, I think AI has a role to play, and for the humans, we have to write articles that cannot be produced by AI. So for example, when we are interviewing someone, then we have to come up with creative perspective. We have to come up with a unique interview that cannot be produced by artificial intelligence. So as I've mentioned earlier, I think the biggest asset for journalists is the trust that we have. So rapidly, we have an influx of information And amidst such transformation, I think we have this asset called trust from the public. So in that sense, I think we have to raise our competing edge.
When we start the development, in the process of the development, we had a meeting with the developers, and then I talked to the CEO of the developing company, and then I said, I'm not expecting that much the articles created by AI, because compared to the articles created by human, definitely it will short on the quality. So do your best. That's what I said. But when we met again for the meetings for the advancement of AI, I talked to him again that I was wrong. So I believe that after a certain period of time, I believe that AI can create the certain level of the articles created similar to the quality of the articles created by a human. Of course, we need some articles that we need to create when for the parts that the AI cannot create, but still the investigating and the surveying is still our responsibility as a human journalist, not AI. Of course, we can hand over some part of the jobs to the AI. As I said during the presentation, I do the investigation, I do the survey, and I pick the who will write the article, but the writing itself or some part of the production parts can be delivered to the AI. I also agree the overall. So when I use the AI technology, I always talk to many people that I'm actually using the AI. AI cannot work alone. So it depends on the input. So if the elementary school students use the AI, the results will be at the level of the elementary school students. And then if it is adults it's using, then the results will be different. So that is also the case for the journalism. So if we do in-depth investigation and a survey on our own, that depending on the quality of the investigations, that the quality, the results from the AIs will be different. So based on my personal experience, this is also the case. Always I saw the shortcomings of the AI because they always driven by the input. So without input, there's no output. So it heavily depends on what kind of information that human put. So I believe that whatever the AIs create is depending on the humans. So it is only true. So of course we are talking about the articles created by AI technology, but I believe that is also a result of the information that we put from the beginning to the AI technology. So definitely the human should be involved. Of course, that not alone the fact that there must be the huge amount of the articles created.
So you've mentioned that we have to verify the information as a social norm, and also it should be contributed to the human rights of our society. Now, last question goes to Ms. Trina. So from the perspective of data journalism, by adopting machine learning technologies, as you have mentioned in previous answers, now, what are the potential values of machine learning in journalism sector? That's my first question. And also, I would like to ask the Korean presenters for Korea, from certain aspect, maybe we could use AI with low cost and high efficiency for producing news. And I think those were the main ideas of your presentations. But other than that, from the perspective of data journalism, maybe for more professional reporting, what are your concerns for that, and what kind of attempts are making in your media outlets? So with the closing, I would like to listen to your answer first, starting with Ms. Trina. Yes. From your perspective, how do you think the machine learning contribution will unfold?
Thank you. So I wonder, it's really important to me that when we're thinking about AI, I'm sorry, the translator is speaking Korean in my ears. There we go. So it's important that when we're using AI, we think about how can we use this technology to gain access to information more quickly. I think there is this desire, it's like we want to create content, but we can't only access the information. We also have to work with people to actually create stories. There is this desire to, these days, now that we're really looking at the digital trends, we're like, how many clicks did this thing get? But we really have to think like, what is our measure of success? Are we interested in impact? Or are we interested in like getting our subscription numbers up? I think it's really important. I think especially for the journalism revenue model that subscriptions are really important. Like we need more and more people reading the information that we put out. However, if we focus more on AI and less on how we can use AI to connect more people, we might find ourselves writing the same old stories that we've heard time and time again without giving ourselves the opportunity to dive deeper into issue areas. My last piece really is like, as journalists, I love seeing when when journalists are using internal AI systems like transcription services, even again, that text extraction and organizing text for helping reporters in their investigations, because it can be really challenging to access, especially if you have lots of documents. But my fear is that we will lose our connection with people. I think as journalists, especially if we're using AI, we should consider collecting more information from people. What are people saying? I don't think that there are a lot of people who trust legacy media personally. I've not seen that. I've seen a huge distrust in the United States of America, at least in our legacy media. More and more people are interested in local journalism, seeing what's going on in communities and how what's happening locally communicates globally. And so the more and more we can use AI to go deeper into communities and connect that to like larger international communities, that is the better use case to me. And that's the place where I hope we go more towards connecting people than leaning on AI to just to churn things out because we're afraid that we'll get lost, we'll get left behind.
Thank you for your insightful answers. Now I would like to turn to Korean presenters. Yes. So 6 years ago, when I was studying data science, I wanted to write a good article by using data. That was my personal goal at the time. Now, when it comes to data journalism, I think we need realistic approach. That is, data journalism itself is really an ideal way for reporting. But currently, the return of investment is falling short. That is, we need a huge amount of time, and we also need a journalist with efficient coding skills. But writing article would only be like once in a 6 months or once in a year. And the cases that we have seen, I'm not sure about the time that it has been invested to write an article with the data science. So realistically speaking, because of the ROI issue, there has been a lot of departments in journalism companies with expertise in data science, but those departments are disappearing, and many journalists are hoping to actually utilize the data science in writing articles. So because I was a person who tried to utilize data science in writing articles, but I soon gave up and then shifted to distribution and also writing articles. But still, I have some hopes in one corner of my mind. That's the goal that I would like to pursue. This is an issue that has to do with managing the business, and of course, we do have some journalists with great passion. So in that sense, if we have more time and room for chances and opportunities, I hope that we could have more cases where the journalist utilizes AI for writing articles. For now, I think this is something that has to be made with the decisions from the executive board right now. Now, for me, I'm currently having difficult time understanding data journalism, but for now, if I just talk about the data journalism, that what I have understood from the presentation. So before, I thought that data journalism has something to do with numbers. Now, for example, if we are to predict the Russia and Ukraine war based on the data of the shipments in the ports, well, when it comes to ideal data journalism, that is, as we skim through a cluster of data, it is not just coming up with kind of analyzing those data, but it is coming up with new issues, new source of articles, and new source of news. To do so, we need new idea, and we have to find a new idea from the cluster of data. And we have to also think about how we can back up that idea. So those two things are the concerns that we need to solve. So for now, just like Ms. Kim mentioned, I think in Korean journalism sector, I don't think we do not have enough time for each journalist to actually realize those ideas. And in order to verify those ideas, we do not actually have time to actually skim through all the cluster of data. Yes.
So I'm very interested in the AI-based journalism, data journalism. So AI radar I introduced is followed by the new version of the AI which is coming in the future. So what I'm surprising is the foundation model itself is advanced in a faster way, so faster than I thought. So actually, we are handling like 1 day data, and then it's running well. So later, I believe that currently it's also possible to put the whole bunch of the data's amount of the one book, and then in the matter of 1 minute, it analyzes all the data. So I believe that next year the amount of the data will be processed larger than that. So once the foundation model has been developed further, definitely that will be possible within 3 months or 6 months later. She mentioned that there's difficulties to meet the ROI, but once we have advanced the feature of the AI, definitely we will reaching the times that we will meet the ROI as well. So based on that efforts, then if we can use the advanced AI technology, definitely we can use and realize the data journalism in the new forms within 6 months, I believe. Yes, in this era, I believe that we have to grab the two goals. One is the ROI and also the other parts of the utilization parts as well, advancements of the development. So that's, in the one hand, we have to take approach to analyze the data. So for the what the Trina said, natural language analysis and LLM technology can be used to analyze so that she successfully dig into the cases of the missing. And then I believe that also can be expand into the other scope of the cases, not just related to the sexual harassment or the women's, or maybe we can also expand it into the other parts of the society as well. So definitely, I think most important thing is to install the efficient system, and at the same time, we have to use and then these technologies to dig into the hidden problems that we have in the society as well. That is what I'm expecting to see in the future. So due to the time constraints, I'm going to wrap up this session. Thank you very much for everyone. Thank you, professors. So we had in-depth discussions to share the actual cases for the utilization of the AI technology. Thank you all. So we are going to have a short break times, and then from 4:15 we are going to resume second session. So during the break times, we prepare the food and the coffee and snacks outside. So if you want, you can enjoy the food outside. And then please come back to the hall before 4:15. Thank you. So let us begin the session 2. This session is the second time under the topic of the AI revolution and coexistence. And then this sessions will be conducted under the theme of the AI technology and journalism's coexistence. So we are witnessing the fast changing in the journalism as with the advancements of the AI technology. So first speaker is Irene Liu. So we're inviting the Irene Liu, director from the IFPIM. So this is the English presentation. So for this session, Irene's coming to the Korea. So please give her a big round of applause to invite her to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think we are part of the last session, so thank you for staying through the day. I know it's been a long day. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers at KPF for inviting me to speak. I remember that actually I was looking back at my emails, and I remember that I spoke actually in 2017 and in 2018 at this exact conference. Back then, I was an employee of Google, so I had left journalism and I had gone to a tech company. And I remember in my first presentation at this conference, one of the very first slides that I had put up was this question of what does the world of journalism do when anyone with a phone in their hand can commit a journalistic act, right? And I remember that discussion was really about how do platforms and journalists work together. A pandemic has happened since then. I have had another kid since then, so a lot has changed. I cut my hair as well, as you can see from that picture. But I think what is so interesting about this moment is that we are still grappling with the question of how do journalism organizations and how do technology platforms work together? The big change is that the platforms are not the same. In 2017, we weren't talking about GPT or OpenAI or others. Google is still there, and I'm looking forward to hearing from my former colleague. But this just really reflects how quickly things change, right? It's only been, 7 years since then? And yet now we're talking about technologies and capabilities that we could never have imagined before. So you can see that my presentation is called Evolve or Perish, Redefining Journalism in the Era of AI. And I think that obviously we're really hitting a very critical moment in journalism. And I think that things fundamentally still haven't changed, as Trina mentioned in her fantastic presentation. The core of journalism is still humanity. It's about telling stories, it's about connecting, and it's about digging into the hidden corners to find those stories that, quite frankly, those in power and others don't want you to see. In this era where technology can enable greater unearthing of content that's already online digitally, I predict that suddenly we will see less information online as readily, because if the machines can do it faster and at scale, then one of the ways to slow down the discovery and that investigative process that journalism does is to take things offline. And so, if anything, the role of the journalist will become increasingly important. But how the journalist functions in the broader information ecosystem is changing, and it's going to change. And so I'm just going to quickly talk through first, kind of the fundamental question of sustainability for public interest media. I have since left Google, and I am now with an organization called the International Fund for Public Interest Media. It is okay if you never remember that, because no one can remember the name, it's very long. But in short, our focus is really to address the sustainability crisis we're seeing in media, particularly in low and middle income countries around the world. So you can see here that 76% of media organizations are in critical need of funding to support operational costs. Overall, we've seen a significant decline in print advertising dollars. That decline has accelerated in certain markets faster than in others. But we're still expecting to see that decline of 40% from 2019 to 2024. And we know that the worst effects are felt in low and middle income countries because there's significant income inequality, economic resources are scarce, and the needs of technology are widening that gap as well. We know that disinformation has dire consequences for democracy. This is not only a global south or low and middle income country problem. The threat of disinformation does not, it goes beyond geography, it goes beyond socioeconomics, it goes beyond geopolitics. It is everywhere. And it is one of the greatest threats for democracy. And so we know that when journalism, when high quality information fails to cut through, that it will help the spread of mis and disinformation. You need high quality information and information that people trust and know where to go to in order to tackle. And quite frankly, news organizations and journalists need to be able to articulate what makes their content different from all the stuff that people see online. How many hours do we spend on our phones consuming content? What we are seeing in this technological revolution is the fact that there is a big distance between where content is created and whether or not the user, the person who is consuming it, actually knows where it comes from. And so we feel that this really is a critical threat to elections, to human rights, to issues that we are all facing globally, such as climate change and other critical issues. We know that autocracy is on the rise. Politicians now can bypass scrutiny and media and go directly and communicate with people, no matter where they are in the world. This is what social media has wrought upon us, right? The gatekeepers, and I feel like gatekeeper is often used as a negative term, but it's also a term that allows to filter, right? Quality versus, uncredible information. Those gatekeepers are largely gone for many, many people. And at the same time, we are seeing many, many elections. Studies have shown that journalism and supporting journalism is an effective tool in the fight against disinformation, right? Media literacy, information literacy are critically important. But in order to, if you're asking people to differentiate and seek high quality sources, you have to have those high quality sources to begin with. And if the business model for journalism is faltering, then we need to find a way to make sure that it can sustain and thrive into the future. At the International Fund, we believe that the global response has been weak and that donors are not doing enough to support high quality journalism, public interest journalism globally. Only 0.19% of ODA is allocated to the media and information environment. This is for official development assistance. And of that, just a tiny fraction actually goes directly to media organizations who are trying to do this work, who are on the ground, who who are actually doing the reporting in these markets. So our solution, the International Fund, is to address this issue and to try to make sure that public interest journalism can thrive around the world, especially in markets that are lower income. And the way that we want to do this is to change the way that media development has been deploying funding to these markets and in service of economic viability and sustainability in the long term. And we want to make sure that that journalism that we hold so dear is independent, that's inclusive, that it represents every part of a society, and that it's resilient, that it can weather the political changes, it can weather climate change, and it can weather economic changes to the business of journalism. We're a global coalition. We are in the process of becoming an international organization, but at its core, we are a multilateral fund. So in short, we collect funds from different resources, different sources, whether it's governments, philanthropies, corporates, and also multilaterals and CSOs. And we have a very, very, very strong governance structure that helps us to make sure that we are independent in how we deploy the funding. So no single donor can dictate how we deploy the funding or where we deploy it. These are our board members, and these are our board chairs. So you may recognize Maria Ressa, who comes from the Asia-Pacific region. She's the CEO of Rappler and was the 2021 Nobel Peace Prize laureate. On the right, our other co-chair is Mark Thompson. He is currently CEO of CNN, but before that, he was CEO of the New York Times, and before that, he was Director General of the BBC. And we have representatives from finance, from development, also from journalism, all advising our work at the International Fund. So how do we do this work of supporting public interest media in the Global South? We focus on 3 different pillars. The first one is countering media extinction or capture. So these are organizations that are doing critical work in markets that are facing big news events, whether it's an election or particular environmental issues or otherwise. And they're essentially on the brink. We will provide funding to help them keep the lights on so they can continue to do the work that they need to do. Sort of the next step is working with media outlets that are perhaps not in crisis, but want to become more resilient and essentially prepare for the future. So we'll fund these organizations to work on developing their models. Sometimes you need to spend money in order to make money in the long term for news organizations. So we want to provide that resource so that they can diversify their revenue sources to increase their independence and their ability to provide public interest journalism. And then the third category, which is what I'm going to talk about mostly today, is fostering systems change. The fundamentals of the journalism model that we used to operate in print, is no longer relevant. It's no longer relevant because the business model is not sustaining. We know that digital advertising does not make up for the losses that we've seen in print advertising, and most importantly, users are moving on. I think that Mr. Seung, when in his presentation about kind of the rise of the creator and the rise of independence, that everyone can have a voice, is in fact very true. And for some, it has actually been a benefit. People and groups who were not represented by legacy media in the past now can represent their communities online and find an audience. The challenge is that all of it is dispersed. So if you are lucky enough to find an audience, it may be a very specific audience. How do you have impact? When it comes to fundamental issues that journalism is trying to cover, holding governments and corporates to account, to explain what is happening in the world to people so they can make decisions in their daily lives. You need scale, you need distribution. The technology has changed that. And so this is the area that we're really focused on. And at the International Fund, I've had the privilege of both representing and running our Asia-Pacific operations, but also now transitioning to a role focused on AI, emerging tech, and regulation. And the reason is exactly what I'm going to be presenting on today. This is just our where we operate, so many countries in the global south. And this is the area that we are now working on. So we know that the digital revolution has changed how journalist content is produced and consumed. We know that the largest players, whether you're talking about tech companies or large media companies, are consolidating their reach and their distribution. And we really feel that there needs to be an opportunity to ensure that many of the markets that we operate in, which have their own unique contexts. For those of you who are here this morning, you will have heard the diversity of the uses of AI across the Asia-Pacific, across ASEAN. And also try to change that power dynamic so that markets that are in Asia and also in other regions are not simply receiving the kind of and reacting to the unintended consequences of technology, but are actually part of shaping that new information ecosystem. And I think that there is opportunity and promise in this. So technology broadly, what is it? It's fast moving. It's transformative, it's cumulative, and it's user-centric. That's the thing that I find to be most interesting about how we as the journalism community have to think about technology. Even if you go before Web 1 and you go to print and TV and radio, journalists are still presenting their content on those platforms. They're just also doing it on the internet, also on social media, also, in some cases, not everyone, grappling with Web3 and the blockchain. And certainly, everyone now is tackling generative AI. If I were to make a prediction in 3, 5, 10 years, where will people get news in quotes, right? And I put it in quotes on purpose. I would tell you that I would say there will be 3 places. The first is AI-mediated spaces, chatbots, search, social media, aggregators, voice assistants. What you receive will have been, there will have been a new gatekeeper, which is some sort of AI technology that will be determining how you get your information. And it will not be nearly as fraught from the user standpoint. I think many of us in this room are still sort of thinking, well, labeling, we should make sure that we always say if something has had an AI intervention. I don't know how many of you have little kids who ever use home devices, speakers, home speakers. They're very happy to ask Siri or Alexa or Google or whoever a question and get an answer. They don't question, well, what is the provenance of this source, right? They just get an answer from a little speaker and they say, okay, well, that's the truth, right? So user behavior will change, and the comfort that we will see with AI is going to increase over time. We all know globally that there is a lack of trust in institutions and in media. I think South Korea, according to the Reuters Institute Digital News Report, has found that actually South Korea has some of the lowest trust in news in the world. But this is not a Korean-only phenomenon. This is a global phenomenon. So people are going to trust their friends and their families when they share things on chat apps. That is going to be an authoritative mediation. Again, a gatekeeper that is friends and family, and those you know. And then the third, and this speaks to kind of the earlier presentations, trusted voices, right? We're talking about creators, influencers, politicians, and also ordinary people, right? Just people who, for whatever reason, capture your imagination. They look and feel trustworthy because they're more authentic online. And because of that, you will feel closer and more trusting of whatever they have to say. So This is not just my idea and my prediction. This is really, I think, backed by what we are seeing in terms of trends. Now, I'm going to show a few slides from the Reuters Institute Digital News Report. So if you look at the importance of different gateways to news, right? So it's very small print, I apologize, but the orange is, direct. So for over people who are 35, it is equal. The way that they go to get news is equal between going directly to a news website, getting their information through social media, and then getting information by searching. Then there's also mobile alerts, aggregators, and email, right? Now, look at people who are under 35. And remember, this is global data, right? But I think that it's still very stark. For people under 35, they are searching much less and going to they're much less likely to go to a news website or a news source directly. They're getting their information already through an AI-mediated surface, which is social media, and also they're still getting information through search. Now, why does this matter? This is what I find very interesting. So this looks at, based on which surface you're getting your news from, who you pay attention to. So for X and Facebook, I would say those are the kind of older legacy social media apps. It's funny to think that we have legacy social media now, but legacy social media, you can still see that mainstream news has a place. It's still number one in terms of who people are seeking. Then you start going to YouTube. Mainstream media still has a place because it's the one social media that feels most like TV, right? It's more like Netflix and streaming. And yet, if you look at the dark blue, those are personalities and influencers. All of those people who have developed an audience, who have developed a voice and created a following, right? Then if you move over to Instagram and to Snapchat and TikTok, this radically changes, right? Suddenly on Snapchat and TikTok, you have mainstream media just not doing nearly as well as those personalities and influencers. And in TikTok, which I find very interesting, ordinary people, we've heard the term nano-influencer, suddenly have a huge role. And this is the trend that we need to be looking, because that's where under 35s are going. This is why you see politicians, whether you're talking about candidates for the US presidential election, to Bang Marcos, to Narendra Modi in India, not feeling that they need to go to mainstream media and do interviews. They can speak directly to their followers, their constituents through social media, or go through creators and online personalities for those interviews to reach niche audiences. So this was, I can't believe it, 2 years ago, generative AI burst onto the scene. We suddenly had ChatGPT, Bard, which is now called Gemini, and others, that were suddenly creating these magical tools that allowed you to write content, to summarize, to get information in a more conversational way. And now we're moving into a new era where you have generative AI-powered search, whether it's Bing, Google, or Perplexity, right? And many other smaller startups that are also doing similar type work, right? Now, why does this matter? If you think about the ways that people are, kind of consuming information, right? The first one for under 35s, 25% go to, 14% go to a news source directly. They go to social media, already an AI-mediated space, for the majority of their news. And then now search is suddenly moving into becoming an AI-mediated space as well. And so this really, really changes, because when suddenly so many of the sources are no longer directing you to a news website or directing you to click on a link. Once again, the business model of journalism suddenly changes, right? There was this movement towards, okay, so we know that people are not buying newspapers, but they're going online. Yes, but they're going online, but you can still reach them through your websites. So you can monetize through digital ads, or you can have reader revenue. You can have subscribers and membership. But what happens now suddenly if the majority of news people are getting is not from you directly? It's translated or summarized on a search page, or it's being sent through social media. We have seen globally that social media has been downranking and deprioritizing news, partially because news organizations are, through regulation, demanding compensation for their content, right? But we see that that's slowly going down. And also, the rise of the creator, the rise of user-generated content is suddenly allowing many, many people to generate news. And the question then is, from a technology standpoint, do you need to get it from a legacy media organization? Or can you get it from a Reddit or an X or a Twitter or some other source, right? Especially when these pesky journalists and news organizations keep asking for money for their content. They keep demanding that someone pays for it, right? So to go back to where these spaces that people are going to go, what happens now and where do they go? What do we do? And what are the implications for the industry, right? I think that if we are starting to see that more and more people are going to be getting their information through mostly these three sources and not direct from news organizations, what we will see is the blurring of what we consider to be journalism and just information, right? Users already are having trouble differentiating between what we consider to be journalism with our ethics and standards and processes, and then also other information providers. Now, this is not necessarily an altogether negative thing, right? Actually, there are many people out there who are producing high-quality public interest information that is critical to helping the world understand their own lives, their communities, and others. One thing that struck me about Trina's presentation was the fact that they were using volunteers from a community to help them with their reporting, right? So journalism and its standards and ethics and kind of processes are no longer only for journalists to do. Again, individual, regular people committing journalistic acts. But what this means is that there is an increasing attitude among users and also tech platforms that perhaps we don't need to privilege information that is being produced by journalists and by media companies. It is noteworthy that there are only a handful of deals, licensing deals, that have been done by OpenAI and others to license news data. But there was a deal signed between Google and Reddit for $60 million a year for their content, right? Content that Reddit is not producing. Reddit is just the aggregator and the platform where people are putting their information out there. So the other thing that is an implication is that publishers continue to lose the direct connection with audiences, right? If your content is being summarized and being presented, if it's being blended with other news sources, there is a loss of brand recognition and that audience funnel for reader revenue. We see the further erosion of the business model of news, and there's this open question. I think we've heard it a few times over the course of the day, questions about what is fair use? What are the copyright implications? What are the competition implications? How do news organizations try to take control of and seek compensation for the use of their content, both for training data as well as for grounding data for these products that are consumer-facing? And then, lastly, I think the term fake news really came out to the forefront in 2016. Since then, we've had years of development of media literacy, information literacy. It's in our schools. It's something that people really think about. But a core part of that literacy is saying, seek the source, understand where something comes from, then decide for yourself. But if you don't have a source, then where are people supposed to look? If there is less trust, how do you build trust when you don't know where information is coming from? So I just have a minute left before I finish, but just a few thoughts on this, right? So, so what should the industry of journalism, of news gathering do in the face of all of these changes? I think there has to be a real rethinking of what we do. What I've been very heartened by is to see all the different types of experimentation and use of this technology. The news industry is trying to make the most of this technology in its reporting, and there are opportunities and new frontiers to break for the types of journalism that can be done. On the other hand, how do we ensure that the news industry and the craft that is the high quality standards, the ethics, and the processes of news gathering are not lost, that there continues to be a model for that to thrive? Because as much as Mr. Song would say that this is the rise of the creator and everyone should do things by themselves, we know as a community that journalism is hard, it's expensive. In some countries, it's dangerous. It can be expensive. It can be dangerous physically as well as legally. You need institutions to provide mutual protection, right? It may not look the way that it looks right now, but there will still need to be institutions that house this work and create standards around it. So what should journalists, news organizations, the news industry at whole think about how to tackle this? First is, news organizations need to focus on direct relationships with their audiences, right? How do you build loyalty? How do you consider user needs? How do you make sure that you are serving those user needs? And how do you differentiate your content and demonstrate the best-in-class editorial standards? How do we make sure that people care about those things? News organizations are terrible marketers. We think that the content and our processes should stand on their own, but actually we do need to do some marketing to sell what we're trying to get out there, right? So another important element is taking control of how your content is used. There are web controls to allow you to control whether or not your content is being used by the different LLMs as training data or for grounding data. And so using robots.txt to take control of that is important. Now, whether an organization chooses to allow their information to be crawled or not, there's actually no right or wrong. It's really a decision that is up to each organization. Because in some cases you want the distribution, in some cases you want to protect your IP. All I am saying is that whatever the decision, it should be done thoughtfully and with care. Don't just let things go, right? Also, news organizations, news publishers need to begin collaborating with each other and as well with other content producers, other producers of public interest information. The rest of the world users don't differentiate now between what is news and what isn't. This category that we think is so precious it's jargon to most people. They just want information that they can use, right? So we need to learn from the mistakes of Web 2 and no longer be victims of unintended consequences. The only way to do this is if news organizations come together to advocate and to innovate, to build standards for this new information ecosystem, and to share learning about building this technology. That is the only way that this will survive, because building those standards and taking a stand and saying, this is what we want this information ecosystem to be, and not just burying your head in the sand and saying, well, if only everyone would just buy newspapers again. It's over. We need to evolve, or we will continue to not find our way. And then lastly, We need to work together to engage and advocate with regulators and with tech companies. Regulation is coming. Governments are grappling with AI. They're grappling with how it should be manifest and used in their societies in terms of everything from how this impacts workforces, how this impacts the environment, how this impacts content. All of these factors are going to be weighing in. In order to make sure that information integrity and high quality content is a value, a public interest value, a public good that is incorporated in these technologies, the only way that will happen is if the news industry and others who provide high quality information speak in one voice and say that quality, authoritative, timely, and locally relevant information is valued, it's critical for society, and it should be prioritized and remunerated by tech platforms. That's the only way that we will be able to ensure that we have information integrity into the future. Thank you all very much, and looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Irene, for your insightful presentation. 네, 다시.
Thank you, Irene. Irene already visited our conference multiple times, and every time she always provides us the insightful speech. Please give her a big round of applause once again. So next presentations will be delivered by Korean. Google Cloud Korea, Shin Hangsik, AI specialist, will provide us the speech. So I'm curious what kind of the job it is in terms of the AI specialist, by the way. To answer to your question first, hello, I'm AI specialist Shin Hangsik. AI specialist is the role in Google to deal with the customers. Of course, there is a news and media companies and also other customers are there. So when our customers are applying the AI technology, AI specialists just support them. So first of all, I would like to thank organizers to invite us to here. So this is our last presentations today. So thank you for your attention until now for a long time. So today my presentation will be about the things that I'm doing in a daily life, which is when we apply the AI technology into our business model, how can we use the technology, and then I would like to share some use case related to that agenda. So first one is I would like to explain about AI trends first. So it is, sometimes I think it is meaningless to explain about AI trends because usually what we mean by the trends is the trends lasting 2 to 3 years, but recently it's so fast changing. It is meaningless to say tag some circumstances as a trend. So anyway, I'm going to explain the trends, but I think it is very difficult to catch up with the trends, honestly. It feels like sometimes I feel like we are using the future technologies that is allocated to the future times now. So I would like to focus on some trends that have been relatively lasting longer time. And the second agenda will be journalism, and then this will cover some use cases. In the previous session, the panelists discussed a lot of things, but I cannot cover all of the topics, but I can give you some summaries based on the actual case. And the third agenda is the 3 topics related to the consideration of AI adoption. First is I'm going to show you one graph. This graph is hypocycle graph, which is released every year. So once we have the technology, what kind of the cycle that the technologies are following for the life cycle. So the top is the bubble stage. So upon the birth of the technology, it always goes to the bubble stage, and then on the top of the bubble, as the attention of the public is subsidized, or sometimes the people are disappointed with the with the technology, you can see where the generative AI is. It's right around the corner, turn around the corner of the top, which is in the stage of the disappointment. So this is the commonplace. So we saw many customers of our company also showed that they're disappointment, because when we have the generated AI, everyone's expected a lot, but many people have been disappointed with the generative AIs failed to meeting our expectations. But I think this is the time where the business models start, actually. And then second theme is, I believe that Miss Kim mentioned that about the cases related to the Gemini. So Hugging Face site, you can see the reader board on that website. So Gemini is on the relatively higher ranking. So what I want to deliver here is that there's a multiple commercial LLM which have been advanced a lot. So when we choose the model, rather than choosing the one single model, they're going for multi-models so that they can set up a system whenever it is necessary. They can choose another model over the other one. And then these are the companies listed on the. So my pointer is not working. So you can see the Jeep here, XAI. So OpenAI has been in the dominant position in the past, but it's overtaken by the Jeep, which is the Chinese LLM model, and XAI is Elon Musk one's. This is the LLM created by Elon Musk. So what I'm saying here is that there's always a fast followers who can catch up with the development of the technology, which means that as time goes by, the cost will be decreased. So I'm expecting that we will reach the point where we can use the technology at the cost of the electricity. So before the red line is the last year, and then blue is the green is August. So in the x-axis, the cost per 1 million token, and then as you can see, as time goes by, the price has been down by half. It is not just driven by the competition of the players on the markets, rather it has been mature. So big tech companies is not earning money through the LLM. I'll explain about that in details later, but anyway, here you can see the declining trends in costs. So based on this trend, the hallucination is a kind of the new things that we are using, which was not used in the past. So what I mean by the hallucination is providing the wrong misinformation. So as other speakers already mentioned, the hallucinations implies the instability of the current technology. The instability always comes from, for example, the LLM is always relying on the training data. So if there's any other data which is not included in that training data, it is always likely to produce the wrong misinformation. So since last year, the generative AI is the competition of searching, and then this will be the truth in the future as well. So in terms of the two sides of the searching, first one is when we use the AI, how to use the searching competence. And the second thing is that I think we already heard multiple times. So how to change the markets through the searching. So what kind of the changes will be there in the journalism because of the searching engines development. So when I talk about the LLM, we always talk about the training data. So without any training data, they cannot produce the right results. So even if there is a LLM, RAG system requires to do coupling to produce the good searching results without any hallucination. So to use the AI technology in the right way, searching is a very important part. So the second thing is how the searching will change through the AI technology, and then what kind of the impact of those changes will have in terms of the journalism. When we think about that, let's say before internet, when we collect the information, either we went to library or we took the interview with the people. It was very long time ago, but once we have had search engine with laptop or desktop on the table, on the desk, we could collect the information, and then we can also click the link to get the information. But once we have a mobile phones, it becomes portable. The searching becomes portable. So on the go, you can search. So as Irene mentioned, and other team leader, Ms. Kim also mentioned, so data itself is collected through the link. So which means, simply put, they're accessing to our website. So landing page was our website, but for the AI, it provides the summary of the data. So of course, you can have sometimes a link to go to the source page, but basically it's a summary based. So through search, how to search, through the changes in the way of searching, everything will be changed accordingly. So, and then there's a lawsuit against the Perplexity. Perplexity is another search engine based on AI. So refining all kinds of information. Perplexity is providing the personalized, customized answers to the questions. If you are elementary school students, it adjusts the results customized to the elementary school students, for example. So anyway, that changes a lot in the searching. So this is sometimes challenging and then threatening the current system. And I'm not sure whether you heard about the human in the loop. So I already mentioned that we're prematured stage. It has not been fully matured, so that involves a human touch. So that's why it is very important to have the perspective that the human should be involved in the process. But unfortunately, a human might not be necessary after the certain period of times once we reach the advancement of the AI technology. But as of now, human can enhance the overall function of the AI. So we always need human. For example, when we write article or when we manage the content, whole process should involve human. This is what is happening now. I'm not sure whether it is a near or the far future. Of course, the development will go in the direction of reducing the need for the human touch. But anyway, human is necessary. So when I heard the use cases, I think we can categorize into the 3 buckets. The first one is the back office automation. So productivity increase and then cost reduction included in this stage. And then another one is a customer service. So how to use that technology for the customer services. So most of the our customers are focusing on the customer services, but because of the limitations that we mentioned so far, the use cases are tilted toward the back office automation. As of now, that is the best we got. So from these two perspectives, I try to categorize some of the use cases. I categorize those use cases into the 5 buckets. As I said before, in the previous sessions, we heard a lot of use cases mentioned by the speakers, panelists in the previous sessions. So I cannot cover all of them, but here, blue one is the perspective to make contents better. So I'm going to explain it one by one in detail. So this is about the creation of the contents, and the yellow part is the automation. So data, when we create data, we use AI technologies. So when we talk about the US journalism, through the AI, data cleansing, refining is one of the things that the US is using the AI technologies to do. And then this is also the case for me. And then personalizing the news is another core factor. And then fake news, detecting the fake news. I'm not sure whether it is the use cases a lot in Korea or not, but generally, yes, we have lots of use cases for the finding the fake news. And then another one is the boosting efficiency. So I couldn't get the approval from the Korean customer, so I couldn't put the Korean company here, but the contents creation is on the top of their needs. Text generation summary is also included in this sector, and then followed by automation and personalization by Korean companies. So first one is the content creation. First one is a summary. We already mentioned a lot. So if the content is in the long form, if there's no summary, we always lost of tracks from the readers. So most of the LLM is supporting multilingual system. So basically they're supporting multiple languages. So most of the LLMs are widely used as a translator in terms of the accuracy. In the past, machine translation is based on the machine learning, which has the higher accuracy, which is the case for those who use the Google translation. But for the nuance and the contextual understanding, LLM is also widely used for that purpose. And for example, we can make the style of the talking. For example, please make the speech as a baby speech. For example, that is also possible through the LLM. So one thing that I'm really surprised to hear is that many journalists are struggling to decide headlines. So that is also the sectors where they are using the AI technologies, and the image creation, also one of them. Automation is next. Data process is involved. So machine learning, and then when we do the data analysis, 80% of the resources are used to prepare data. Based on your experience, you already know that the analysis is the limited part of the whole process. Before that, we need a refining process, and collecting the data and refining and processing process are required to conduct the analysis. So categorization and tagging and other processes are required. So that is the sectors that we can do automations by using the technology. And the third one is the personalization. I think some of them are already covered several times, so let me skip this part and going to the last point. So AI, web modernization. We talk about the website or AI modernization a lot. So what I mean by that is that once individual lands our website, all the contents are adjusted according to the taste of that person who accessed a website. But I think we already heard the presentations that depending on the signals that we collected, that customization is happened based on the signal analysis. So this can be the wow point for the customers as well, which is readers. So when we discuss the business model with our customers, most of our customers said 80% of the readers are using the normal AI and so rather than using the just standard AI technology to the 80% of the functions that the readers are using, we can use the advanced level of the AI technology to create a wow point for the 10% of the parts or features that the readers are using. So that can also increase the satisfactory level. I'm not an expert in the journalism, but in terms of the user experience perspective, if there's no wow point, so if satisfaction level is low, even if there's 80% AI-driven functions that they will not access. So I believe that this is very important points that we can refer to in terms of the personalization. And the next one is the fake news or disinformation. I think Irene already highlighted multiple times on this matter. I think this is one of the very important challenges that we have to find a solution. And last one is the efficiency in the newsroom. So efficiency and productivity means cost reduction, means human resources and the human labor cost also are included in this matters. So whether the AI technology can replace the human or not, whether the AI technology can write articles on behalf of human, those are the topics that we discussed and that heard the good ideas and feedbacks from the panelists. Recently, AI agents is the new concept. AI assistant is the same meaning of the AI agent. So if you're the one who are using the AI technology in the right way, you're not going to be replaced by the AI. So if you can be replaced by the technology, I think you're using the technology in the wrong side. So that's my personal opinion. So there's some limited parts of the jobs or the parts that the humans are doing can be replaced by the technology, but automation and all the technology applications would make change a lot in overall landscape, of course. So to recap, I'm going to mention 3 points. Efficiency and productivity will be enhanced by AI technology, and enhanced reach and engagement of the customers will be expanded. In the past, to give more satisfaction to readers was the focus of our business, but we have to look into the diverse taste of the customers nowadays as well. So I used to use a Google search, and nowadays we are using the Gemini, because the reason why I transferred to the Gemini is when I search something that I don't know, Gemini is the better. Of course, the ChatGPT is okay. So I believe that most of the LLMs are explaining well. So what I mean by what I want to deliver here is that the strength point of those LLM is explanation of the concept. So maybe it is related to the democracy or not, but I think it induced the people to easily get the information. That means that drives the people away from the Google websites that requires more efforts to search to find out some information. Of course, there's a limitation of the LLM, but accuracy-wise, LLM is also best, better if we use them, those tools, in the right way. So I think we can use them to increase the efficiency overall. So this is the benefit I'm expecting. And then third one is consideration. I think this is also the part of the trends. But as a member of society, I just suggest the considerations that we need to think about. First one is the market expectation. Generative AI was released 2 years back, and then at the time people expected to the points where whichever the questions is asked by anybody, it can answer to any questions perfectly. We call it artificial general intelligence. There's a concept called AGI. This is the concept where whatever the questions that people ask, like a Superman, it can answer to any question in a perfect way. This is the concept of the people that the people had when the generative AI was released first. So this is abstract from the thesis about the position or status of the development of the generative AI. It has been a few months ago. So maybe as of now, maybe we are at level 2 or 3. But what I'm saying here is that this is short on many people's expectation. So this shows how much the expectations that our clients or potential readers have. This is the takeaway that we have to refer to based on this information. And then this second question is, AI will mostly help or not? This is also abstracts from the certain report. The South Korea is on the top, and on the right side, left side, green side shows the countries that shows a positive perspective, which are Asia or Europe. Actually, in Asia, developing countries and developed countries are mingled together. But anyway, overall, there's a positive perspective from Europe and Asian countries for the AI technology. In contrast, South Africa or other countries show the negative perspective on the AI technology. So this is basically the data that shows the result of the survey, whether you think it is positive or negative with the advent of the AI technology. Depending on the countries, and within the countries, there is some different results in terms of the perception. But what I feel based on what I thought from this data is, so I think it provides the good food for thoughts whether the AI will mostly help or not. So I covered a multiple AI, and then we also covered a multiple agenda today, but this is relatively less discussed agenda, I believe. So this is a sovereign AI. I think second slide, the chief AI company, I mentioned about that. And then their ranking was relatively higher. This is a Naver Clover sourced data. LLM AI that we are using is supporting the multilingual system. So we have the expectation that it can support the Korean language system as well, but reality is a little bit different. Our data, which reflect our history, our culture, our language, that is a genuine LLM of our own. So, sovereign AI, or even if it is an open source model, for example, we need the certain models that we can use according to our condition or circumstances, it is very difficult task to do because it needs financial resources, and then language barrier is one of the challenges that Korea has. Because in the process of collecting the global data, there's definitely the language itself that served as a barrier. But it is not the case only in Korea. So all the big techs and the key companies are in the United States. So many of the countries around the world are making their own efforts to create their own sovereign AI. In this efforts, what is the obstacle? That is the hardware. Because even if we have abundant financial resources, we cannot have a GPU. So hardware is another challenge that we have to solve. So anyway, I explained about the overall trend as well as the use case, and also how to reflect the AI technology into your business. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
So that was the presentation from Mr. Shin Hangsik, the specialist in Google Cloud Korea. Thank you for sticking to the given time. Now we're going to move on to the discussion session. I think we'll have more time for this discussion. So originally it was planned for 40 minutes, and because we only have 2 speakers, I believe that we will be able to have fruitful discussion. And the reason why I'm saying this is because, in fact, on the back of the leaflet, you can see the QR code, and here on the screen, you can also see the same QR code. Please scan the QR code and please upload the questions that you would like to ask to the presenters. And also, you may ask about the questions that was not included in the presentations. Any questions are welcome. So once you upload these questions, then we will deliver them to the moderators. So if you have any inquiries or curiosity, feel free to ask them to the presenters. You'll be able to receive your answers from the presenters. Moving on, let us invite the moderators and the panelists. First, let me introduce the moderator of the session 2. We have Kyungdal, the professor of Media Graduate School of Korea University, as the moderator. And also, once again, let us invite the 2 panelists. Once again, please give them a big round of applause. Yes, moderator, please. Great to see you. I am Kyungdal. Now, I'm usually at the site, so currently I'm working at the Korea University as an assistant professor under the topic of AI and digital literacy. So a few years ago, we are currently witnessing the conferences on journalism, and mostly it is centered on AI. And 2 years ago, with the advent of ChatGPT, 2 years have passed since then. We're now all talking about artificial intelligence. And the topic of today's conference is journalism, including and embracing AI. Now, I think in this session, we have to think about how we should embrace AI. Now, we also need to think about whether journalism is actually embracing AI or whether AI is predominating journalism. Also, one of the panelists mentioned about the extinction. I think we are having more concerns regarding AI and journalism. So because this is our last session, I think once again we'll be able to ask together and talk about the relevant issues. So for the questions, I think there will be 2 different questions. So first one is that how we can incorporate AI in the site of the journalism, and second is from the broader perspective, we might be able to talk about the crisis of journalism triggered by AI. So first of all, in line with the last presentation, we also talked about the sovereign AI. So first of all, I would like to ask questions about detailed application of AI. Many journalist companies are now incorporating AI in their media. In fact, when you think about the strategy team and relevant departments of media outlets, when we are having a meeting with the Google specialists, I think that this would be the question that will be asked to the expertise. Then where should be our starting point of incorporating AI into our media? So I would like to ask you such questions.
Sorry, it's a very difficult question as a first question. But honestly, we are not the one who set up a business strategy. So what kind of the business target would be and what kind of goals would be, that is the scope of the company should do. And then if you can explain about the scope and the goals, we can respond to that. But mostly, there is a lot of cases that we saw the data insufficient. Like I said, LLM is not technically learning our internal data. So the competitive edge of the individual company is coming from the creation of their own data so that the LLM can learn about your company. So like I said during the presentation, that process is very important. So before application of the LLM, if you're ready for the training data for your own company, then it can fasten the timing of the application of those LLM into the actual cases. So in addition to that, the news agencies actually use there's actual cases that introduce. So DBR, for example, that was actual use cases. That is one of the cases that they solved the problems through the LLM. So there must be some entailing challenges like a security, for example. And then there's lots of concerns like build and buy. For example, it's like you have to buy an external party's system, or we have to build our own system. That is also a dilemma. So do you have any opinions on that in the future plans? So SLLM trial is, I believe, last year, most of the companies wanted to have their own system because they're really concerned about the security problem. So at the time, when we said we do the fine-tuning based on the open source when we talk about the SLLM, so that is the way of the fine-tunings when we use the LLM, when we talk about the small LLM. But at the time, the function of the open source itself had not been advanced. So in the graph that I showed, open source itself has been advanced a lot by now. So open source means that the open source that the individual companies can use for the fine-tuning. And sometimes it can be used for the small parameters. This is not the concrete, this is not a conclusions, but I think that definitely the direction of the development will be a little bit different from that we had before. So generative AI is like generating everything. So when you use the open source, specific expert fine-tuning is required. For example, when we use that model to the summarization, it should be specialized in the summarizing. So that would be the directions that I'm expecting to see in the future. So mid-trial or the existing big model also, mixture of experts. That is also a combination of the multiple expert models. So individual expert models can be specifically applied to the small scope. That is one of the solutions that we can apply with the limited financial sources. I believe that is also the parts that we have to think about when it comes to the sovereign AI. Because overall, the competition is getting fierce, so it is very hard to catch up with the new technology.
This question goes to Irene. So as I was listening to your presentation, so you talked about the extinction of media and also the supports from the funds and diverse organizations. It gave me some kind of condolences. But when it comes to directly interacting with media, and when it comes to giving advices regarding AI issues, you've mentioned about the poor marketing of the news agency, and in terms of business management, I think this marketing is really crucial. You mentioned that we need marketing and business strategies. So then in detail, from your point of view, what kind of efforts could we make? Do you have any detail or specific examples or cases that we could try from the side of journalism regarding marketing?
Well, I think that first and foremost, news organizations really should tie up more with educational institutions. The best way to get brand loyalty is to start young, right? So if I were running a media organization, I would be trying to fundraise and partner so that I could make sure that there's a newspaper, my newspaper or my radio program is the one that's in every school, that every kid will do it. I remember when I was a kid, my parents couldn't afford a babysitter or sending me to summer school, so every day I had to read the newspaper and summarize it for my parents. So if you build those habits early, then I think they stick. That's one thing that I think is very useful. I think that the other, is part of the problem is that news is very competitive. We focus on our own brand, and we try to kind of build that one up. And we are entering into an era where individual news organizations cannot compete against platforms for distribution. And so news organizations need to come together. The other thing is that they need to organize around building standards for themselves. I think that this is, of course, very challenging, but tech platforms don't want to be the ones deciding between what is good and authoritative and what isn't, because that is a very political and messy thing. They don't want to be arbiters of truth, even though tech platforms end up being somehow arbiters of truth because they have to ultimately decide what you see and what you don't, right? When I say they, I'm not saying a person, I'm saying a platform, right? So I think that that's really something that is important. Now, that really depends on context. I think that certain markets, have mechanisms for the industry to regulate and create standards and make a decision about who is meeting that standard and who isn't. That is not the case in a lot of other markets. And so that's one area, I think, where the industry has to come together. If I were running a media organization, I would be really focusing on developing partnerships with local news organizations. I would be doing a lot of partnerships with identifying public interest data sources at the local level that are either on paper right now, they're not digitized. I would be working to get exclusive partnerships with those small news organizations and others, because if I can produce a product, a data product that is verified, high quality, authoritative, timely, and locally relevant, that has breadth in terms of geography and depth, I will be one of the winners in this, because I suddenly have a product that is valuable to individual communities and also to platforms like Google and others. When they want to, kind of find out who is going to be producing good quality, I want to go to a source that has standards, that has validation, and has already done all of the hard partnerships work with many, many small sources.
Yes, thank you very much. You also mentioned about fostering the future readers and also building partnerships with other local news agency. That was a really good comments and advice. Now, one of the curiosities that, realistically speaking, if you look at the media agency, including OpenAI, with various AI platforms, we're thinking about whether to build partnerships and cooperations with the tech companies. Currently, OpenAI is having a lawsuit with the New York Times, such as currently it has built contract with Germany's Axel Spring and other tech companies. For the Korean news agency, it has not built contract with ChatGPT or OpenAI. Now, in detail, this is actually the task that we're facing. Then, in this sense, when it comes to cooperation with AI platforms, how should news agencies should approach?
It's a very tricky one. So realistically, this is my opinion, but I think that the deals with big companies are, yes, about quality content and big brand names, but it is also a political calculation, because very few publications have the resources to sue OpenAI, like the New York Times. If eventually you can pick them off by cutting a check, then suddenly there are very many fewer organizations that will go through the trouble of a lawsuit. So the big ones, especially the ones that are producing content in English, they will eventually get their deal. And there will be content partnership, there will be a tech partnership, because of course it is in the interest, these technologies have to be tested and kind of pushed to get better, right? I mean, why did they put ChatGPT out into the world for everyone to use? Literally, it's free user testing, right? Like, everyone was so excited and doing this, but you're also contributing to making that product better. So that partnership is in the interest of the tech companies as well. I think that if we are looking there, for the markets that I operate and that I'm focused on, it is quite unlikely that they will be not first, not second, not even 500th in line to get a deal, right? And to the question or the point about sovereign AI, I think Korea is actually a market that I am particularly interested in, because it has this very, from a media tech standpoint, it has a very sovereign ecosystem that's developed, right? Because you have Naver, you have Dom, you have Kakao, like all, these technologies are homegrown, and the news industry has in some ways been insulated because of the revenue licensing that has happened for the longest time from the tech platforms to news. There are many other parts of the world where publishers are trying to get the Korea deal. They want that licensing, right? And so, to me, what is very interesting about the Korea context is the fact that you do have sovereign technologies that are being built up. You're quite protected in terms of just Korean is a harder language. It's not like Spanish from a translation, from a language standpoint. The hurdles to have American engineers building a product that is optimized for the Korean language context is just, it's much harder, right? You mentioned the human in the loop, right? You have to have someone who can decide, oh, that's a good article that actually is providing good information and is well written, as opposed to, oh, that one is not very good, right? And so globally, this question of low resource languages, languages that are either have small populations, that have small poor populations, that are not as monetizable. On the one hand, it's going to take a while. Some of the colleagues on the panel that I was on this morning were saying that one of the barriers to using these technologies is that they don't work in local language very well. In some cases, that's a barrier to innovation. On the other hand, it gives a little bit of time to prepare for how to tackle questions like copyright and competition and all these other questions. Whether there's will to regulate around that is also a different question. I think that my fellow panelists on that panel were saying that when it comes to copyright, the bigger problem is just getting people who are copying and pasting your article and putting it on your own website, right? So whether or not it's being used as training data for an LLM is like a third level problem. There are very basic copyright infringements that are actually barriers at the moment. So.
Since I heard your answer, I think maybe similar one, but I got a question from the floor as well. So, the current AI is driven by the U.S. big tech, and then it's a kind of like a money game because it's financial resources intensive. So the local countries, in terms of the development of the AI, they are lagging behind because the overall market is driven by the United States and China. So relatively, other countries feels lagging behind. So what kind of the impact of these trends on the journalism? So you mentioned about the local agency as well, news agency. So the local journalism wise, how to increase the sustainability of the local agencies, what kind of things should be done? So how do you take on these matters overall?
So for many of the markets that we're operating in, we are trying to have ongoing discussions with the industry to say, it's time to work together. It was interesting. I was having a conversation with someone about kind of these ideas of collaboration and whatnot, and they said, do you think that would work in the United States? Is that going to happen? And I was just like, honestly, I wouldn't spend my time trying to, convince US publishers about this because they're, from the political calculation, they're the ones who are most likely to get a deal, even small local media in the future. Because these tech companies are based in the United States. They are producing content in English, which is what they're trying to serve that population. So they're all going to go fight and try to get their own deals, and that's fine. But our focus is really on markets that are big enough and actually have the technical know-how to potentially build sovereign AIs, right? I mean, Brazil, Indonesia are home to multiple unicorns. They have homegrown talent. Whether they have the hardware is a different question, right? And the water and the power resources that are required for this kind of computing. But those are the markets where you could see innovation on the technical side as well as potential cooperation. At least that's our hope, that that we have learned the lesson of Web 2, and that those who care about information integrity, that we take ownership of being part of that solution, and that we use our brain power and our persuasion not just to try to get a deal for ourselves, which is what we've seen with a lot of regulation relating to news and technology, but also making an argument that says, this is critical for the functioning of society. Hey, regulators and governments, instead of just creating fake news laws to go after people, maybe incentivize the production of high quality journalism, and let's consider that a public good that is necessary.
Thank you.
Yes, please add on. So, first of all, from the perspective of sovereign AI, so I showed you the leaderboard. Now, the problem of technology, in some way, I think this will be overcome. Because whenever the first mover goes to a certain direction, the followers will follow behind. But up to that stage, how much time will be needed? Well, I think it's the issue of time, but it's not the issue of how long we will govern this. But for now, to narrow those gaps, we will need strategies in terms of country. So for example, in China, they have Alibaba or Tencent. They have a huge amount of funds. They are also receiving supports. It was created by Tsinghua University in China. And when it comes to hardware, everything is actually about the battle of hardware. We have to think about how we are going to secure the hardware and how we are going to apply the hardware in a fast pace. So I'm not skeptical about the technological factors. So Korea is also doing various efforts, but based on GPU, Korea is coming up with various models. We have various companies and agencies coming up with their own models. I think it is important to overcome the issue of resource. And we have several questions to Mr. Shin Hangsik. So first, when you talked about the projects of news agency, you mentioned about the overseas cases. Are there any domestic cases? If so, in that case, I think there will be a lot of gaps. Then what kind of gaps did you feel when it comes to domestic cases? Okay, so personally, it has to do with search. That is, search for the premium users, providing search functions to the premium users. So we have articles that is about 50 to 60 years old, and so far, those articles that have been accumulated within a company, it accounted for about 3.8 million, and if the user search for it, then the search engine gives the results that is in line with the specific context. And we were able to hear a lot of cases from different groups, and I think this is similar in this case. So within those 5 categories, these use cases fall under those 5 categories. So depending on the ideas, I think everything should be about the ideas. But when it comes to domestic technological gaps or our differences in understanding the technologies, I think those gaps are quite narrow in Korea.
Additional question is, Gemini, in terms of the AI, has not been separate contracts assigned with the Korean company. So I'm not I don't think you're the responsible for that, but in terms of the Gemini model for the Korean news agency, do you have any plans in the future? If I may ask the questions, it might be the very sensitive. Yeah, understand me, it's very hard to answer to that question because I'm not responsible for that. All right. So once we have a ChatGPT, Telco is also handling that, have been handled that issue. So currently, definitely we have to think about how to deal with this situation in the future. But I think there is a high interest and attention to the signing the contract with the platforms. So the wrapping up. So the additional question to you, Irene, is the misinformation. So when we talk about the misinformation, the fake news, you emphasize about the aspects related to the fake news, and then you used to be work for the news agency and the Google tech companies as well, and then you are also coming back to talk about the journalism. So based on your experiences currently in terms of the responding to the misinformations, that must be at a social level or like individual company or the news agency level. So could you share your opinions on how to deal with that information as the pre-journalist?
Thank you for the question. I think it is a whole of society issue. Everyone is responsible for trying to make this better. And so what I would say is that, information literacy, media literacy, it's in the schools, but also it starts at home. I think that we have to model good behaviors when it comes to how we use our devices and social media and others. I think that I hope that we're getting into a better place. When we started playing around with all these tools and these, kind of apps and things, we didn't know what we didn't know about the ramifications. I think that millennials and Gen Z are probably the ones who we'll find out later on, are the ones that were most affected by unintended consequences. Hopefully we are learning from that. But I think that, as much as possible, this is why I say partnership, uneasy partnership is important. We can't rely on governments to regulate this problem for us, because like every other corner of society, they are an interested party. This is why there is always classically tension between journalism and politicians, and journalism and commerce, because we know that good journalism is good for society because it holds institutions accountable. It puts a mirror up for ensuring that there's a rule of law, which is how we can make sure that societies function, but it's uneasy. However, we can't do this on our own. Government needs to be involved. By nature of, regulation, there needs to be, there will and should be regulation around, technology, around all of these issues, right? I think that one of the worst outcomes that we've seen with regulation relating to misinformation is these fake news laws that go after individuals. That does suppress speech, right? But can we, in those uneasy partnerships and relationships and engagements, advocate for making quality and, of information a priority, something that is a public good, something that deserves to be supported, not just by a commercial model, because I think, quite frankly, the commercial model around journalism is struggling and has been struggling for quite a long time. It is noteworthy to me that, Trina, when she was talking about her work, she works for a nonprofit organization that is supported by philanthropic funding. Her partner, that also won the Pulitzer, works for a nonprofit newsroom. I don't think that that's the only solution and the only future, but I think it demonstrates that, whatever journalism will be, this craft, this mission, this aspiration, it will look very different in the future, and we need to be okay with evolving to that future.
Thank you for your answers. So I think we already had the very meaningful questions and the answers to those questions. So most important thing here is that one of that is responding to the misinformation, and then after the certain years, there must be the depletion of the quality information, and with the inundation of the AI-generated information, there's a pessimistic views for the futures that we would no longer enjoy the quality informations. But anyway, I believe that we already covered all the questions that we got from the floor, and that we had a very long session for a whole day. So I would like to wrap up today's session overall. And then I already asked the organizers that it's okay to finish a little bit earlier than the schedule. So if you have any last comments you want to add, you can go ahead. If you have, yes. So next year, rather than the ChatGPT, I want to hear more Gemini rather than ChatGPT. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Irene, please.
I really don't want people to come away thinking that there is no future for journalism. There is a future. It is more important than ever. We just have to reimagine it. That's all.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So please give them a big round of applause once again. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, it was a indeed long day. It was also a very meaningful presentation. Now, if you want to know more, we also have another sessions prepared for tomorrow. So please look forward to tomorrow's session. Now, this comes to the end of the day 2 of the 2024 KPF Journalism Conference. Let me briefly introduce about tomorrow's sessions. So today we discuss innovation of journalism using AI and coexistence. For tomorrow, we're going to talk about the crisis and response of journalism due to AI technologies and diversifying the monetization of the news agency and expanding the strategy of journalism. We have prepared the presentations of the experts from in and out of Korea. So for those who will participate in tomorrow's session, please make sure to bring the ID card because the reissuance will not be allowed. So starting from 10 a.m. tomorrow, we are going to begin the day 3. So just to give you a brief idea about the presenters, we have Mr. John Reading, the CEO of Financial Times Group, and also we have Ms. Anne-Marie Pinsky, the curator of Nieman Foundation of Harvard University. And also we have Ms. Vivian Schiller, the Deputy Director of Aspen Research Institute. So it will be meaningful if you could join us for tomorrow's session. Now, I would also like to ask you to scan the QR code for the survey, which is here on the screen. So for those who have participated in today's session, I would like to ask you to leave your comments for the survey. Okay, so I think we are having a bit of technical issues. We have also sent the QR codes via text message, so please scan the QR code. And also please scan the QR code on the back of the leaflet to take the survey. Now, if you enjoyed the survey for today, and if you have any ideas for improvements, we will reflect your comments for the next year's presentation and conference. Once again, I express my gratitude to all the participants for staying with us till the end, and I will look forward to your visit for tomorrow. Thank you.